Hello and welcome into Off the Bench. Reed Mouse here. We've got a good show for you today. We are on the eve of the Crosstown Shootout. Tomorrow at Cintas Center, the Xavier Musketeers versus the Cincinnati Bearcats. And we've got a lot of talk about that very game here on today's show. At 10:20, we're going to have on Rick Broering, obviously college basketball analyst here in Southwest Ohio, covers games for NKU, does banners on the Parkway, covers the Xavier Musketeers. And then later on at 10:45, we are going to have a veteran, an alumni of the Crosstown Shootout, Kenny Freeze. Kenny Freeze is going to be on the show later today, so it's going to be kind of Xavier-centric, admittedly, but tomorrow we're going to have some Bearcats on, our Cincinnati Bearcats guys who are doing a live show. If you're a Bearcats fan, doing a live show tomorrow at Martino's. I'll be there. I'll be the one producing it, wearing my Xavier blue, and those guys will be on the show tomorrow. They'll be doing a live show, but today we're going to be talking a lot about the Xavier Musketeers. We are also doing a live show this Sunday. This Sunday down at Smoke Justice. Me and Stone. Stone, you're coming?
I'll be there.
Going down to Smoke Justice, doing a live show for the Cincinnati Bengals watch-along as they take on the Buffalo Bills. We'll still be doing the watch-along with Craig, but the pregame, halftime, and postgame will be down there in Covington at Smoke Justice. I think there's maybe some bad weather coming, but we'd love to see you guys there. I'd greatly appreciate it. So we can hang out, watch the game, have some fun, maybe have a drink or two. But it'll be a blast nonetheless. Stone Shields, welcome you into the show. Thank you so much, as always, being there. We have a lot of Xavier guys on, and there's a bit that I do. I made fun of Paul yesterday when he was on your show. If you go to Cintas Center, and I'm a Xavier fan, you go to Cintas Center, it is a lot of vest. You see a lot of, not necessarily the puffy Patagonia vest. I almost wore a vest today, and I look over at Stone. He does not have a vest on.
Not a vest.
But he is. I thought it was for a second. I was like, man, we should have been matching vests. But Stone, thank you so much for being here. I talked about the Bearcats watch along tomorrow at Martino's. This Sunday down at Smoke Justice, we're doing the Bengals watch along. We have another promotion going on right now to help some of our content creators. What's going on here at Chatterbox?
Yeah, we got some T-shirts that are up. They're on our website, chatterboxsports.com/store. And we got a bit of a Black Friday sale going, which is pretty exciting. I think it's going to run through December 10th, so you got about a week still left. As you mentioned, Chatterbox Bearcats, Chatterbox Bengals, Chatterbox Reds. Get 2 shirts for $40. Use code DOUBLE. Again, that runs through December 10th. 100% of the proceeds go to your favorite Chatterbox sports creators. And, yeah, plenty of good stuff up there. If you're excited about the Emilio Pagan deal, maybe we'll touch on that throughout the course of today's 2 hours of content. Go get some Chatterbox Red stuff. Nobody covers the Reds like we do here at Chatterbox Sports. So some cool swag up on our website, chatterboxsports.com/store. 2 T-shirts, $40, and that'll run through December 10th.
Michael Rolfe with a $20 super chat. Just ordered a bunch of C-Box merch last night. Let's go X. I know you hate that, Stone, as a diehard Bearcats fan. Right. You hate the $20 super chat from Michael Rolfe. Thank you so much. Let's go X, baby. Let's take another one. Last time UC won at the Cintas Center was 2001. It was the first game ever played of the Crosstown Shootout in the Cintas Center. So trying to keep that streak alive, at least if you're a Muskie fan. If you're a Bearcats fan, you're not wishing for that. As we mentioned, Rick Broering coming on at 10:20. Kenny Freeze today at 10:45. So thank you so much. Looking forward to those interviews. But first things first, the first thing I want to talk about, as we always talk about here, is the Cincinnati Bengals. And as I mentioned yesterday, there's a lot to unfold when it comes to the Bengals. I hadn't been on the show for 2 weeks, and I think I mentioned this before I left, but I want to really reiterate this point because I think it is undoubtedly true. I think it is by far the most important thing that we need to learn, regardless if the Bengals go on and win out and make the postseason, which will be incredibly exciting. If you're looking at the long-term plan for the Cincinnati Bengals, the number one thing we need to sort out this year in these next 5 games is what we have coming off the edge. We've seen some good games from Myles Murphy and Joseph Asai now for a couple weeks. This defense undoubtedly playing better over the last few weeks. Trey Hendrickson, as Stone has put out, as Jay Morrison has put out, I think I'm a little more optimistic than those guys on any prospect of him coming back. But just the way that this has unfolded over the last few years, I think it's more than safe to assume that the Trey Hendrickson era in Cincinnati is done. And he was the elite pass rusher that we've had for the past few years. The Bengals have spent now high draft capital multiple times on developing this edge, because outside of the quarterback, it's the number one spot on your team that you have to figure out. Outside of who your quarterback is, the most important piece after that is your offensive tackles and your edge rushers. And if this defense wants to improve at all, if this defense wants to be viable at all, we know we have a great offense. If we want to get where we think we can go, which is being at the top of the AFC, relying on Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, that offense, then the defense has to be at the very least mediocre to get to those areas. And we've got to figure out who Myles Murphy is as a player, who Joseph Asai is as a player. Shamar Stewart, I think me and Stone are in the same camp when it comes to Shamar Stewart, which is expectations aren't very high. But we've got to know if it's worth the Bengals going out this offseason, getting more edge rushers, going out this offseason, spending a first or second round pick on another edge rusher, or figuring out if this team can do anything going forward off the edge. Because that's where it all starts on the defensive side of the ball. And that's where this team, the ceiling can be raised just by Myles Murphy turning into, and we don't need him to be an elite pass rusher. We don't need him to be a Pro Bowler. We just need to be able to account on pressure consistently from one of those two guys. I'm tired of watching this team over and over again, seeing the opposing quarterback drop back, an immobile quarterback like we saw with Aaron Rodgers a few weeks ago, drop back for 6-7 seconds and unload a strike for 15 yards down the field. I'm tired of that. Part of the reason that the Bengals haven't been able to win these close games over the last 2 years, as Stone has put out multiple times, is they don't have that closer. They don't have that Mariano Rivera, that Emilio Pagan to come in and shut the door down when the Bengals have a lead deep in that fourth quarter. They don't have that. They've got to be able to find that. We know we have with Joe Burrow. We know we have with T. Higgins. We know we have with Jamar Chase. We think what we know we have with several pieces on even the defense in the form of, is Juan Drago Turner really this good of a corner? And you can point to the linebackers are the worst crew in the entire National Football League. Get it. Understand it. But no piece is more important than that edge rush. We've got to be able to put pressure, because more often than not, with the points that the Bengals score, they're going to be dropping back in that fourth quarter. The opposing teams are going to be dropping back in that fourth quarter. Are we able to have guys, are we able to dial up enough pressure to close the door when that happens? Are we able, when the opposing team is not multifaceted but one-dimensional, are we able to shut the door and close it? Stone, I brought this point up before on Off the Bench, and I'm just reiterating it. Do you agree, and you can disagree, as we do multiple times, do you agree that the most important thing that that we need to figure out as Bengals fans this year going forward is what we have with Joseph Asai and Myles Murphy?
Yeah, I think so. I've talked about it several times. Osai's kind of on that 1 year prove-it deal right now, 1 year, $7.5 million. I thought it was the best decision for the organization to kind of move on after last year, because you needed just new bodies and new faces in that room defensively. Instead, they decided to invite everybody back, and it was pretty ugly for much of the year. Obviously, things have turned a corner here at this point, but I think Osai is going to garner a sizable contract just when you look at his age and some of the production that he's been able to have as far as pressures and sacks go. Usually, if you find yourself in that mold, you're going to get a sizable deal, and I really hope the Bengals don't give it to him. Very thankful for what he's done the past few weeks. Deserves a lot of credit. He was one of those guys that, a lot of people question some of the effort on the defense. Yep. No effort questions with Joseph Osai. He's out there playing as hard as he can at all times. But if you're going to spend a big chunk of your salary cap towards him to come back, I don't know. Myles Murphy, on the other hand, obviously still in his rookie contract. We'll see what they do with the 5th-year option, right? But he's definitely turned the corner, and I don't think there's anything Osai could do that would say, you know what, I think we should bring him back. Again, he's improved, great, but we've seen a lot of bad football there as well, and also with him, the injuries have been a big factor, especially early in his career.
So you think that there's no world in which Osai is going to be a Cincinnati Bengal coming back?
That's not what I would do. I do think there's a world where they say, you know what, we like what we've seen, and we drafted this guy, and he's shown signs of being a good player, and we want him to stick around. I just don't think that would be the correct decision. But then again, I thought that last year, and they said, you know what, we'll let you stick around for another year and give you $7.5 million.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, we'll see. I think that the Bengals are going to look at themselves, look in the mirror this offseason, with Trey Hendrickson likely going away, with knowing that Shamar Stewart was absolutely abysmal, that they understand that they cannot go into next year with just Myles Murphy and Shamar Stewart coming off the edge. They're going to have to put more high-end draft capital, or they're going to have to spend significant amount of money on that edge rush. And the Bengals, I think it's not an overly harsh criticism when I think their front office can be lazy at times, and they look at the easiest option, which is the guy that's already been in the room, and they'll just go, all right, we'll pay Osai what he wants, and we'll bring him on back. We'll say, hey, you're now going to be a major piece of this defense as we expect you to be these past few years, and you've got to earn your keep. You got to earn your money, and I think that would be happening. But we'll see. Other thing I wanted to talk about, and I don't talk a lot about it, was college football. Obviously, we are in the penultimate week of college football, or at least in terms of college football playoff rankings. And the reason I don't talk a lot about college football, as I've brought up on this show many of times, is as a product, I'm not the biggest fan. I keep getting told over and over again how great this product is, and I have yet to see it. I will say this, though. There's been this long, reigning, overarching thing that happens in college football. We just saw it with Lane Kiffin, and I think it detracts from the sport greatly, where other teams, it's eat or be eaten. Other teams can come out and they can pluck your best coach. They can pluck your head coach. You have success somewhere, and it's really every single job is a stepping stone except for maybe 10 programs in the country. And even some of those are just stepping stones to another great program. There's really 3-4 end destination spots where it's Ohio State, Alabama, LSU, Texas, maybe the end of the list. Michigan, that's the end of the list. There's someone beneath you to where, hey, if you're the head coach at Florida, there's always that Alabama job's a better look. If you're the head coach at Penn State, well, if Ohio State comes calling, are you going to take? There's only so many destination spots, and in the sport, you can come and pluck coaches out from one. We just saw it with Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss. The reason that that's always been the case is because it was deemed it's easier to win a championship, or you get more money at LSU than you do at Ole Miss. It's easier to win a championship at Ohio State than it is at Michigan State. It's easier to win a championship. You'll get more money at Alabama than you will at South Carolina or Florida. That's always been the case. That's why it's always made sense, and that's why there's always rumors around when someone like Lane Kiffin did what he did at Ole Miss. You're like, well, he's going to get a better job eventually, and he's going to move on, or he's going to move up. And my simple question is, and it might be a naive one, how long is that going to continue on in this era of the NIL? To where, it was easier to get recruits at Ohio State because there was some cachet with that. I'm going to go play at Ohio State. I'm not going to Nebraska anymore, which Nebraska used to be one of these programs. I'm not going to Illinois. I'm going to Ohio State. It was easier to get the top-end recruits. But now, where cash is king, and other programs are willing, these Texas A&Ms, these Ole Misses, these previously lower tier programs, not the top tier, but the second tier, even third tier, are able to spend $20 million. How much longer are we going to continue to say, LSU is a better job than Ole Miss? It has historically been. I get it. But in 10 years, is that still going to be the case? Are we still going to be talking about their stepping stone programs? Or are we seeing the kind of evolution of where this sport's going to be? I've said this before when it comes to college football. I find it funny when people lament watching professional sports and you see the Dodgers and you're like, I'm tired of the Dodgers winning every gosh darn year. I'm tired of the Kansas City Chiefs and the New England Patriots winning every gosh darn year. I'm tired of the Lakers always winning or the Warriors always winning. When you can put me in cryo sleep and every 10 years I'll pop out and be like, hey, who's the number one team in the country for college football? And it'll be like, oh, it's Alabama. Or it's Ohio State. Or, it's Michigan. Or whoever it is, Georgia. It's the same teams every 10 years. I think that there could be a world in the next 20 years where that's not the case. And the simple point of that is I think that money is the great equalizer of all things. In a world where cash is king and you got donors that are willing to fork up the money, who's to say in 20 years Ole Miss is a better job than LSU? Am I making sense, Stone?
I hear you.
Do you agree?
It's definitely different than it was, but we were talking about this off air. Like a guy like Lane Kiffin, who's all about, image, and he wants to be at the top, and pageantry and stuff like that, and attention. It makes sense for him to go to a school like LSU because LSU simply has more of that than Ole Miss, right? And flying around in a private jet, and you have the facility and Tiger Stadium, just kind of the aura, I guess, of all that is something that lured Lane Kiffin in. But for a guy like Kirk Cignetti, who is obviously a lot bit older than Lane Kiffin, and what he's done here at Indiana, this is his second year, has been tremendous. And Penn State, I think when they fired James Franklin, they're like, oh, we're gonna go get Kirk Cignetti. But Cignetti's like, all I've done here at Indiana is win. They're giving me resources, and they're going to, up my salary, give me a new contract. Why the heck would I leave, right? I don't think 7 years ago, pre-NIL, you would see Kirk Cignetti stay at Indiana and not go to Penn State. So I definitely hear what you're saying. I think it's a little bit different with Lane just because, he's kind of chasing the top, and I definitely think LSU technically on paper is, a more prestigious program than some of these other places. But, yeah, I hear you. Think about when the Bama job opened. Obviously, there's a lot of pressure following Nick Saban, but Dan Lanning, he was like, I'm good in Oregon. Sark at Texas, he's like, yeah, I'm good. I got no interest in that. So I definitely think the landscape of coaches leaving and just going to quote unquote bigger jobs has definitely changed in this era of college athletics.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think for the first time, and as long as I've been quietly following college football, as long as college football has been a case, college athletics, there is a real opportunity to change the drastic landscape of the sport, and it's via money. To where, yeah, it was 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, easier to win at Ohio State. What's the Jim Harbaugh quote on Ryan Day? Some people start life on third base and think they hit a triple. Yeah. Listen, if I coached at Ohio State, would I be doing as good of a job as Ryan Day? No, but I think me not knowing anything about football, I could show up at Ohio State and probably go 9-3. 5 years ago, that'd be the case at least. Every single year, just because the name. Alabama, same thing. Texas, Georgia, all these programs have been that way for a long time because of the cachet. I think there's a really real possibility that NIL and all this can change the landscape of college. And it already has changed the landscape of college football or college athletics, but I think it can change who the blue bloods are. Maybe we'll start calling them green bloods because of all the money. You get that money flowing. All right. We mentioned that these next 2 days are going to be heavily talking about the Crosstown Shootout, and our first guest today is none other than Rick Broering, Banners on the Parkway, NKU, college basketball analyst. Rick, thank you so much for joining me here today. It looks like we might be having
Is he unmuted?
Make sure that you. I do not hear Rick.
I don't know.
Stone, are you muted on your end here, Rick? All right, well, we will. I'll let Stone try to figure that out, and I'll continue to buy time as we're welcoming on Rick, that beautiful Rick Broering. Can't wait to ask him some questions about the Muskies, because so often, I rely on guys like Rick and Paul as a Muskie fan to tell me what I should be thinking going into this college basketball shootout. the Crosstown Shootout that'll be tomorrow night at the Centos Center. It's really weird, and we're going to talk to Rick about this. A few weeks ago, the method or the idea around this game was that the Bearcats were going to walk away with this thing easily. Much more talented roster. Xavier's in a rebuilding year. Xavier, even though they're at home, first year of head coach Richard Pitino. And here we've seen in the last 2 weeks, everything has drastically changed, both in the way that Xavier's played and the way that UC having the worst loss. I don't think it's crazy to call the EMU loss last week as the worst loss in the Wes Miller era. And you're sitting there wondering, how does a team with the talent that they do, Baba Miller, Shanabayev, like, how does a team with that much talent lose to EMU? We look at the Xavier roster and we understand fully that, hey, this isn't the same. This isn't Desmond Claude and Dalen Swain and Ryan Conwell, Jack Nungy, Quincy Oliveri, Zach Freemantle. These names aren't there. It's a new era here in Norwood, new era for Xavier, and what's it going to look like? But this team, who I heard at certain times, the Xavier team's going to go under 500. They might only win 10, 12 games this year. They appear to be playing better basketball over the last few weeks, playing against, power conference teams, playing better. They took Georgia down to the wire. They've played some really tough games, and they've played better over the past few weeks. But we will see. The best part about this shootout is it really doesn't matter. What's the old cliche? When it's a rivalry game, you throw the record books out the window. And these two teams, it's just crazy to think that 2 weeks ago, if you asked college basketball fans here in Southwest Ohio across the board, who's going to win the Crosstown Shootout, 90 to 95% will go, well, UC will. Even though it's at Centos Center, UC will win. They've got the much better roster. They've got better things to play for. They're playing better at that moment. And here we are just 2 weeks later, and it appears like Xavier, at least according to Ken Palm, and probably according to betting sites here soon, will be the favorite. Just crazy to think about how far these two teams have come in the last 2 weeks. And it appears we're still having some trouble getting Rick on here, so we'll get to that here in a moment. It's also interesting. So I was just talking about college football and how it feels like for the first time, at least that I've followed it, there is a real capacity to change the landscape of the sport and who is the teams that can win the national championship. Are these teams that 5 years ago no one would have thought in college football Indiana would be playing in the college football playoff, let alone be an actual contender for the championship? We're seeing certain teams and basketball allot those resources to their basketball team. Everyone in Big East, there are no football teams in the Big East, sans UConn, and I think they don't even play Division I. Maybe I could be wrong on that one. But they're putting all their money to that. You look at a team like Purdue. Purdue has a high NIL collective, but they're putting all their money on basketball. It's a basketball school. You would think a school like Indiana would be favoring that, but they're splitting it up both ways, and they're doing a great job on the basketball side too. And basketball has always been more even keel across the landscape. College basketball has, as opposed to college football. You can see a UK Wildcats team lose to St. Peter's in the basketball in the NCAA tournament. You would never see Ohio State lose to North Texas in a giant football tournament. That would never happen. The sport itself lends itself to having randomness, the same way that I always talk about baseball does. But if you are able to muster up some money, if you're able to get those, to get the NIL collective to fund your program, you are able to change the landscape. You're able to do this. Stone, are we getting anywhere? We are not. Okay. I'll keep rambling. Xavier, the Cintas Center, tomorrow. There's a lot of talk about, has this game lost its luster? Has this game, that's the Inquirer title of an article that came out years ago, and it's become a meme ever since then. I tweeted it out 2 days ago to reiterate that. But I think there's some legitimate concerns about what this rivalry has become, because I don't think it's crazy to think that it has lost its luster in a sense because of the way that these teams turn over year to year. You're not seeing Zach Freemantle play 5 years for Xavier. There is one player on two teams that have played in this game before. It's Day Thomas for UC. I asked the question, and I'm not saying this in jest. I said it yesterday on the show. I said it off air. I don't know how many new players the Bearcats brought in. You have 12 players on a roster. Let's say they brought in 8 new players. 9, well, I guess if Day-Day's the only guy, they bring in 11 new players. How many of those 11 players even knew that Xavier was in Cincinnati? Was it 1, 2, 3? I would bet less than half. So it's just the fact that this team, this game, if you don't have the Kenny Freezes, the Yancey Gates, if you don't have the J.P. McCurras, Kirkpatrick's, if you don't have those players playing this game over and over and over again to where there is legitimate bad blood, what is this rivalry anymore? What are rivalries in college sports altogether if teams or players are able to just bounce team to team? And while I'm just riffing on college athletics, at some point, because of, I think it is detrimental to the sport of college basketball and college football that players can, I'm not saying that the transfer portal is bad in theory. I think if coaches can leave, players can leave. But just for the marketability of the sport, I don't want to have to learn the entire UK roster every year. I don't want to have to learn the entire Duke roster. I don't have to learn Xavier's roster every single year. Who do we got? Who's new this year? Who does UC have? I don't remember any of these players. I don't want to have to do that. So I think that there's going to have to be, just for the sake of these college athletics, there's going to have to be multi-year NIL collectives. I don't know how you do it. I don't know if you make a legally binding contract to, hey, this is the money I'll give you through our NIL collective. It's 2 years long. You have to stay for 2 years or you forfeit money. You front end it like, hey, here's $5 million over 2 years. You get $1 million in year one. You get $4 million if you come back the second year. And it's legally binding. I think that way we're not – that way at least we know who's going to be on the roster from year to year, and I don't have to completely – every time I turn on a college basketball game, turn on ESPN midweek and, it's Duke or UNC's playing or Purdue or whoever, these top team, and I'm just learning 5 new players. And it's been in some capacity like that for ever since the one and done era. Ever since Calipari went to Lexington and made that one and done, and it's just one player. Hey, if you go on, you move on. By the end of the year, I'm not sure. But there certainly has to be some governing body that steps in and says, this is bad for the sport, guys. I'm not saying NIL's bad. I'm not saying the transfer portal's bad, but it is objectively bad that players are moving every single year. And you've got to be able to not completely take away their right to do that, but give incentive to stick around. Give incentive to say, hey, we'll give you a multi-year deal. And it doubles in year 2. And if that same 2-year deal that I talked about, 2 years, $5 million. You get $1 million year 1, you get $4 million in year 2 if you stick around. And they ball out, they win the Wooden Award in that first year, and they're getting $7 million offers, more power to you. They'd also have a big enough name to where you don't have to worry about, hey, they're going to a new program, where it genuinely brings excitement the way that a free agent would in professional sports. But we will see. We will see. I'm reading up on some chats here. Still working for Rick Broyer. Still trying to get Rick Broyer and remind. Well, that's good. That's good, because if you haven't noticed, floundering over here. Waiting on Rick Broyer to join the show. We're going to talk to Kenny Freeze out at 10:45. Looking forward to both those conversations if we get them. So it looks like we are very, very close to bringing on Rick. Rick, oh my gosh. I have never been happier to see you here live on Off the Bench. I was floundering on there for this show for the last 10 minutes. I've never been able to
tell you that was good. I'd like to tell you that was good vamping, but you got my website wrong, so I'm not going to do so. You did your best.
I apologize. Rick, thank you so much for joining the show. Let's dive right in because we only got so many minutes. One thing I was talking about before we brought you on was that 2 weeks ago, it seemed abundantly clear when it comes to this Crosstown shootout that UC was going to be the favorite. And if you asked all the college basketball fans in this town, hey, who's going to win the Crosstown shootout this year? 95% of them would have said, well, I think it's going to be UC, regardless of it being played at Centos. The Xavier team isn't the Xavier teams that we've seen. It's year one of Richard Pitino. That has all changed in the last 2 weeks. What do you think has been the catalyst for that opinion to change to where we are now seeing Xavier very possibly being will probably be the favorite in this game tomorrow night?
Well, I think it's as much about UC as it is Xavier right now, right? Like the EMU loss, the Tarleton State performance, on top of a team that wasn't performing all that well metrically on the offensive end to begin with, has gotten UC fans feeling like, oh no, here we go again. Wes can't coach offense, that type of thing. So that's contributed to that sentiment a lot. But also, I mean, let's face it, after the Iowa and Santa Clara 19-point losses back-to-back, I think most people in town were thinking this Xavier team's going to have a hard time winning another game, period, much less winning Big East games and competing in that conference. So to see them turn it around, go to the small ball lineup, I think that they found an identity, for lack of a better term. They started playing to a style that fits their personnel, which is going small, stretching opposing front courts out by using Jovan Milicevic at the center position and shooting threes. Trey Carroll at the power forward spot is shooting threes, making plays off the dribble. So a lot of it comes to that. I give Richard Pitino and his staff a lot of credit for making the adjustments necessary to even give themselves a chance. Because had they not changed some things up in a major way, both offensively and defensively, this team would probably be getting smoked still and have trouble winning any games. So they've done a good job of getting back on track somewhat. I think there's probably been a little bit of a overreaction on both sides, both Cincinnati and Xavier fans, to the last few results. But, you know, we're in a situation, again, like we often are with this game, where it feels like just about anything could happen.
Rick Broyer from the Musketeer Report and an analyst for NKU on the radio when they do their games. Rick, it's a meme. It's a bit. Has the Crosstown shootout lost its luster? But we're going into this game where both teams aren't excited. Both fan bases are not excited about the season they're about to go into. Both teams have had major roster turnover this year. Has the bit become true? Has the meme become true to where this game has lost its luster in some capacity, or do you not feel that way?
We're sitting here at 10:34 on Thursday morning. I have not checked the Inquirer yet this morning. Have they put up the annual column yet? Has anyone? I have not seen
the annual column yet.
I mean, the fact that they did that last year after we had joked about it and made it a meme for so many years, the fact that they actually wrote the words luster in a column last year was one of the craziest things. They got mad at me because I tweeted about it. And I was like, you guys wrote the article. You wrote the article after we've been joking about it for so long. So yeah, I'm sure that's coming still. This is what I'll say. The argument used to be, before it was, has the shootout lost its luster? It was always like, where does the Crosstown shootout stack up nationally among the great rivalries, right? Like people would talk about Duke Carolina and UK Louisville and all of those games, and outsiders would tell Xavier, no one cares about the shootout. Locals would tell people, oh, the shootout's the greatest rivalry in all of sports, whatever. here's why that argument never mattered, and neither has the shootout lost its luster because the players aren't from here and they're 1-year mercenaries. It's never been about outsiders. It's always been about the people in this city hating each other, losing their minds, and being completely irrational about this game. That's not going to change. Like whether UC was 0-8 going into this game or 6-2, their fan base is going to act the same and have the same level of hatred for Xavier when the game tips off. And same thing with this year, the game being at the Cintas Center. Xavier fans are going to be going nuts when this game tips off. That's what makes the shootout great. We don't care about the outsiders. We don't care how much the rest of the world cares about this game. When this game tips off at 7 p.m., the entire city is going to be focused on it. And it's definitely changed over years. It may not be as important as it once was. It's certainly not as important to the players on the teams as it once was, but it's still a special game. And I think it's something that the city does very well.
No, there's absolutely no doubt about it, and that was an excellent point. Is because when it's 7 o'clock tomorrow, Cintas Center is going to be rocking, regardless of who's on the court, what the expectations of the seasons are for either team, whether it's Richard Pitino's first year or 20th year as the head coach of the Xavier Musketeers or whatever. That game is always that was an excellent point, and I'm not going to lie, I was leaning towards hey, this game doesn't feel like it does when I was 16 years old. Now that I'm 29. That's just things changing, and change isn't always bad. Speaking of change, you mentioned it briefly there about how this Xavier team looks completely different or is playing much better now than they did 2 weeks ago. How has it surprised you, as someone who follows this team closely, just how much they have changed the way that they play and changed the way that they've been able to compete over these past few weeks?
Yeah, I'm really impressed with the job give credit to the players. They've turned this around too, but the coaching staff really, something we see so rarely in college sports today, and not just college, but pro sports. These guys get paid a ton of money. And I'm not saying it's necessarily about ego, but that probably plays a role in it. But they get paid a lot of money because they think it's about them. They think whatever schemes they've used in the past, whatever X and O's they have planned out for their system is the reason they're in that job and the reason they're getting paid so much money. So a lot of these guys view their systems and whatever they run as so precious and so important that, 5 games into the season, if we're getting our brains beat in, we can't possibly deviate from my precious system because it's what got me here. It's all we have. It's why I'm the head coach at X university. And the thing that Richard Pitino and his staff have done that I think is really important in a transfer portal era where you are playing with brand new pieces every year and you're not always going to be able to put together the exact type of roster you want, and you're not going to be able to backfill your roster and gain experience and groom these guys to understand your system better over the course of years. You have to be able to adapt what you're doing to your personnel in those situations. And I think that's what we've seen from Richard Pitino and his staff this year. It started off being, we're going to fly around, create turnovers, we're going to block shots at the rim, and we're going to play really fast on offense. And, they're still playing really fast on offense, but they've had to completely eliminate having shot blockers in their starting lineup and go with a small ball, stretch, 3-point shooting center and Jovan Milicevic, because they weren't getting anything out of Virginia transfer Anthony Robinson. And, instead of being super aggressive on ball screens and putting 2 on the ball and trying to get a turnover every time they're still doing some of that, but they've also started showing some drop coverages on ball screens now. And they've gone to a zone defense at times when the matchups have called for it, like it did in Charleston against Georgia. So that's where I'm really impressed with the way Xavier has kind of gotten this thing back on track. Now, to be clear, I still don't think it's a very talented team. I still think they're going to have a hard time winning many games against high major opponents, but now they're competitive and now they have a chance. And if you look around the Big East, there's only, UConn and St. John's that look like they've separated themselves from the pack. Everybody else is kind of a middling team right now in the conference. And so if you're a Xavier fan, you feel much better about your ability to compete in conference play than you did a few weeks ago.
You said it right there. You don't feel like this is still not a very talented team. If you stacked up and ranked the 10 most talented players that are going to play on the court tomorrow, how many are Bearcats, how many are Xavier players?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't done that exercise yet. I will say, Baba Miller, I think, is clearly the best player on the floor. I don't know that I love UC's roster either. Like Sean Abayev is really talented, but we're also talking about a freshman who's not playing for an offensive-minded coach who hasn't figured out how to get the best out of him yet. So, he could be a huge factor in this game, but it also wouldn't be surprising if he went for 6 points and was 2 for 12, right? So like that's the thing with UC is a lot of it has to do with how much are you getting out of some of these guys too. Because like I thought Dan Skillings was the most talented player in this game in previous years, and didn't do a whole lot. He ended up basically being booted out of UC and going to Baylor. So I don't know that that's the best way to look at this game, but I definitely think that UC has the more talented team, and I think if things go well for them, here's the good way to put it. I think if UC plays their best, they can win this game by double digits and blow Xavier out. If Xavier plays its absolute best, I think you're hoping for a close win. I don't think Xavier can run away from this UC team. I don't think they're talented enough to do that on either end of the floor, but I think UC could do that to Xavier potentially, depending on how the game flow goes.
I don't think I'm speculating here when I say that confidence-wise, Xavier's confidence has never been higher than possibly it is right now, and UC's this season has not been lower. Is there a world in which you see the fact that UC's confidence is low, Xavier's is high, it's at Cintas, that a few mistakes early in this game can kind of suck the life out of the Bearcats, the arena can suck the life out of the Bearcats, and Xavier is able to lean on kind of that confidence and, the hostile environment? Do you think that is a possibility tomorrow?
Yeah, so I don't want to ruin your show, but I'll go ahead and give you my prediction because that kind of falls in line with it. I would not be surprised if UC wins this game. I just told you I think they're the more talented team. I think they can blow Xavier out if they play well. I am to the point, though, watching UC, watching Wes Miller, seeing some body language stuff going on with that team, to your point about the lack of confidence right now, I don't think they're in a very good spot. I think they get up early on Xavier. They're scoring in the lane because Xavier's 2-point defense isn't very good. They get a lead in the first half, and then Xavier goes to a zone. And then at that point, we start to see Wes scramble, and we start to see a drought, and the Cintas Center gets loud, and you get that, what you were just bringing up, that, oh no, here we go again feeling, if you're the Bearcats. And if that happens, then I think Xavier ends up winning a close one. My final prediction, 68-64 Xavier. And I told you, I wouldn't be surprised by anything on UC's side this year. Like, they could win this game by 15 points, and it would not surprise me one bit. But I cannot trust Wes Miller to win this game.
Yeah, the final question I'll ask is, that clock strikes 0 tomorrow, and you watch 40 minutes of basketball, and you're sitting in your head thinking, I can't believe what I just watched. What is the most unlikely scenario? Is it a big blowout win from Xavier?
Yes. Yeah, that's what it's Xavier not hitting like 15 to 23s and still winning the game. Because like to me, that's the path for Xavier. It's like you got to get hot from the outside. You've got to get the front court. Jovan Milicevic, Trey Carroll knocking down threes and really screwing up UC's interior defense. Because UC is elite defensively right now by the metrics. They're top 5 in the country. And a big reason for that is they have a 7-2 shot blocker and a 6'11 shot blocker in their front court. Well, Xavier's strength is they've got 2 shooters in their front court that they can maybe pull those shot blockers away from the rim, or at least make you change what you're doing defensively if you're Cincinnati, to where potentially you won't be as effective. So if that's how I see the game going for Xavier, if it goes well, if they're able to find a way to win without hitting a bunch of threes and without that happening, that would be absolutely shocking to me.
Yeah. What's your favorite Crosstown shootout memory?
Oh, the brawl. Without a question, the brawl. Yeah, it was, I mean, you get, part of it for me is like I'm selfish in this scenario, and I was young, just kind of getting going, covering the thing. And like Twitter's getting going. It's like 2012. So Twitter was like kind of jumping around 2009, 2010. So it's just becoming a thing. You want Twitter followers. You're tweeting into the void. No one's like really caring about what you tweet if you're the Xavier guy. And then all of a sudden you're the center of the national sports world for about 48 hours after Yancey Gates and Kenny Freeze go face off there at center court. And like I gained like 1,500 followers in 24 hours and all that stuff. So yeah, that was to me by far the best shootout moment in my time.
Yeah, that's a good tease with our next guest coming on here in a second. Rick, sorry so much for earlier. Publisher of the Musketeer Report and a radio analyst for NKU. Sorry, I'm a schmuck and said the wrong website earlier because I am a schmuck, Rick. So
hey, that's okay. You were trying to buy time. I've been there. You're just saying whatever comes into your mind at any given moment and hoping someone can get the damn microphone working. I'll say this. I've never had you can't use the Google Chrome web browser issue in 2025. That's what your guys said was the issue. Had to get off of Google Chrome. We switched it. I'm glad we stuck with it because it was worth it talking to you.
We're anti-alphabet here. So thank you so much, Rick. I'll see you around, and good luck to our Muskies tomorrow.
All right, thanks, guys.
Rick Broyne, he said something beautiful that I think it's become a meme. The Inquirer, it's become probably a bigger meme on Xavier's side than it is UC's time. Has the Crosstown shootout lost its luster? And my favorite thing that he said was that the old argument used to be, where does this stack up nationally? Where does this stack up, as he mentioned, UK Louisville, Duke UNC, Purdue Indiana? Where does it stack up in terms of those rivalries? And it didn't. It just didn't. You ask people outside of this area about the Xavier, the Crosstown shootout, the Xavier UC rivalry, like, what are you talking about? But we know here in this town that this isn't just for brag. Like, it means, what's the SEC motto? It just means more. Here in Cincinnati, it just means more. He also said his favorite memory was the brawl, and we're having on Kenny Freeze, former Xavier Musketeer. Legend, as we gotta size him up here, Stone. We're doing some live producing. Kenny, thank you so much. The Roll Blob podcast. I got that right? The Roll Blob. Yeah, absolutely. And you see all the Xavier stuff in the background. Before we get into this interview, I sent you this picture earlier. A few years ago, I found myself in Kansas City at the College Basketball Hall of Fame. And who did I see in the College Basketball Hall of Fame? Stone? Got that picture ready? Got that picture ready?
Yeah.
Look at this. At one of the activations, Kenny Freeze. So technically, Kenny, you are in the College Basketball Hall of Fame. I didn't know if you knew that existed, that poster of you up there.
I did not know it existed, and that's the closest I'll ever get. I promise you that much.
It was a delight to see our favorite there, Kenny Freeze. Kenny, tomorrow's the Crosstown shootout. You obviously played in this, some memories, won a lot of games, won a lot in the Crosstown shootout. I just asked Rick what his favorite memory, and he's been covering Xavier for a long time. Is there one memory that sticks out as your favorite? And it doesn't have to be the brawl. It could be, what was your favorite memory from the Crosstown shootout in your playing days?
I mean, honestly, when I look back to the brawl, it's fun to think about it just because it was such a huge moment in the school's history for sure. But that also with, I would say my favorite memory, though, is the first game that we played at UC my freshman year. The level of intensity that goes into that game. And, I think there was like 7 technical fouls. It was a very chippy game like it always is. But I think just that first memory of walking onto the court and really getting to experience it the first time as a player is probably top for me. Yeah.
I just asked Rick this question, and I'd be interested to ask you this. There's been a lot to do. The article comes out every year of, has the game lost its luster? Has the rivalry lost its the bit? And he put out a really good point saying it'll always mean something in the arena. It always means something. As the college basketball is evolving, these guys aren't sticking around in one program for 4 years like you did, like Zach Fremantle just did for Xavier. Guys come and go year after year. Yeah. There's going to be turnover. Do you think that the changing landscape of college basketball is affecting rivalries, and more specifically this rivalry?
I think that there's definitely some issues with NIL rev sharing and all of the turnover of players affecting rivalries. But, at the end of the day, it comes down to coaches, fans, universities really driving those points home, because at the end of the day, this rivalry is going to mean everything to the fans on both sides. And I know that UC likes to say it's just another game on their schedule, but I mean, it's easy to say that when you've lost as much as they have in the last 25 years. So, I like, at the end of the day, it's a big game, and anybody that says otherwise, from a fan perspective, is lying. Xavier or UC, because I hear Xavier fans say the same thing sometimes. And I think that it's just absolutely ridiculous. But I think it comes down to players and coaches and, like I said, the universities just really driving home that point, because it's a big game to the people in the city.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the Muskies in particular. They have played significantly better over the last few weeks. I think after those back-to-back near 20-point losses, the second one being to Iowa, you're sitting around looking, what kind of a year is this going to be here in Cincinnati for Xavier? But they've got some confidence. They're playing better. What have you noticed has been the biggest change in the way they've played over the last few weeks?
Well, I mean, the first thing is the way that they've been moving the ball. We talked about it a lot on our podcast. In the first 4 or 5 games, the ball was just going to one side of the court and stopping, and they were trying to play one-on-one, and I think that that's just a product of all of these guys being brand new with each other, new coach, new system, all those different things. But I think the biggest thing is you start to see them. They're moving the ball more. It was, I think, in the Old Dominion game, they came. I think it was 12 minutes to go in the second half was their first unassisted bucket. I could be wrong on that. And I know that Old Dominion, they're not world beaters, nothing like that. But just to see the guys come together, and I think that game, 29 of 33 of their buckets were assisted, which, to see a group of guys that hasn't really played together come together like that after what was Iowa's not a bad loss. And to be honest with you, Santa Clara is not a bad loss. They're a really good team. But the perception of that game was, from what I was hearing, this is the worst loss we've ever had in Cintas Center. And then you follow it up with Iowa, where they had 5 or 10 good minutes where they hung with Iowa, and then Iowa just kind of pulled away. So I think that you've seen progression through the season, and obviously the way that they shoot the ball with Joe and All and Trey and Roddy, and I mean, like, Philip Borovichinen is he's a stat stuffer. It seems like he has a chance for a triple double every game when he's playing it within himself. So, I think that that's really just been what it is. They've been defining roles as the season's gone on. And, I really think that this is obviously a big game, and it's going to test a lot of what they've been trying to implement over the last 3 or 4 weeks.
Confidence is so important in any sport. Any sport, especially these big rivals. And you can even pay into a little more of that when you're a team like Xavier they're going to chuck up threes, right? They're going to shoot a lot from behind the arc. How important, as someone who played, and I know you didn't shoot a whole lot from behind the arc, but as a team atmosphere, how important is it to knock down a couple shots early to kind of feed off that confidence?
Well, we had Paul Frischner on our podcast last night, and he was talking about this. Like, he really feels like this game is going to be decided in the first 8 minutes, and I don't necessarily disagree with him. I think in a rivalry like this, it's hard for either team to lay down and just let it go. Even if they come out and go on a 14-0 run on either side in like the first 8 minutes, and you see a score of like 14-3 or something. So I don't necessarily believe that would be the end of the game, but I understand his point in that, like you said, if Xavier comes out and they Allwright comes out and hits a big 3 to start the game, and Joe hits a couple threes, like, I think that there's just like you said, that level of confidence that you get from having this crowd at your back. And really, it's going to be the first time that any of these players have seen the Cintas Center the way that I remember the Cintas Center.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I think that they're going to have it's going to be a fun game for all of them, and I just hope that they're all ready for it.
I don't know how much you know about UC. I don't know how many times you've watched them this year. They got a talented roster. They got a lot of length. Does that length scare you at all, especially with the way that Xavier has been faceting their play over the last few weeks?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that if we had to post up every single time down the court, and on offense and then on defense we had to guard it in the post every time down the court, I don't think Xavier wins that game. But I think that one of the things that Xavier does really well with their big guys in Trey and Joe, who aren't obviously traditional centers by any stretch of the imagination, but they put bigger defenders, post defenders, in situations that they may not always be in. Like they'll run ball screens where you're going to have a 4-man that's actually guarding the ball on a ball screen. I think that that's something that makes those guys uncomfortable. Not UC specifically, but just in general with the teams that they're playing. I feel like they put guys in situations that they haven't been in before, and it makes it more difficult. And I think you can see that when Jovan's getting up nine threes in a game. He's not taking bad shots. He's open because those guys just aren't used to having to close out on guys like that. And I mean, that's just my perspective, and maybe I could be wrong, but that's what I see. And Trey does the same thing. So I think it's just a different dynamic with Xavier's big guys. They bring you something that others may not.
I know the Roll Blob podcast goes live at Dana's after each game. Are you down? Do you come down every game?
No, I don't come down every game. I run it. I have my little base station here, but I will be at the game on Friday.
You're coming on down. So live post game from Dana's after the game, win or lose.
Unfortunately,
oh no.
So Dana's the Crosstown Shootout. Dana's tends to get a little crazy afterwards, so we're having to pivot. We're doing something from the arena after the game. It'll be about a half hour after the game's over, media rights and all that stuff. Sure. But we're gonna do something from the arena. But then there's a few different players that will be coming in, guys that I played with. So there will be a reaction at Dana's. It just won't be taped.
All right. If you could lace them up tomorrow, what would be your stat line?
Oh man, in my current state,
I
could probably give you about 5 minutes, 3 or 4 fouls.
5 minutes, 3 or 4 fouls, maybe a block, maybe a board or two.
Yeah, you never know. Yeah, you never know. But the fouls I can give you for sure.
You dare Bob Emilio to come meet you at the rim.
Right.
Kenny, thank you so much for joining us here. Have fun tomorrow at the game. Looking forward to that post-game show out at Cintas after the game. Roll Blob podcast. Kenny Freeze, Xavier legend, and he is in the College Basketball Hall of Fame. He's in the halls. There is a picture of him. I've seen it myself. Put that on the resume and brush it up. There it is. One more time. Kenny, thank you so much.
I appreciate you, man. Have a good one.
Yeah, we'll have you on sometime soon. Kenny Freeze, one of the legends of Xavier University. You know what I really appreciated about that interview was Stone, the way that the pictures on the frame by frame, I was taller than Kenny Freeze.
You were
7 foot tall, Kenny Freeze on the side by side. So I appreciated that. So he'll be down there at the Cintas Center tomorrow. We mentioned tomorrow we'll be having some Bearcats. We'll have Hudson Houdini from Chatterbox Bearcats on the show. They'll be doing a live show out at Martino's in Clifton tomorrow night at 7. Pregame show, postgame show. I'll be there producing it. So if you're a Bearcats fan, come on, hang out with the Cincinnati Bearcats guys, the Chatterbox Bearcats guys, because it'll be fun. I'll be wearing my Xavier blue in Clifton territory. Hopefully, a brawl doesn't sort itself out in that game. But man, I can't. Stone, I know I got to get off here because you got an interview coming on here in a second. I was floundering there for that 10 minutes. I was. This is why I've got to have something in my bag going forward. I'm finding the ropes of this whole hosting off the bench thing. I've got to have something. I don't know if you do this. Just have a backup reserve, break glass in case of technical problems. Yeah. And this is a topic that you can go to if something goes bad. I need to have one of those because that was the longest 10 minutes I've experienced in quite some time. But thank you so much for figuring out Rick Broyd. Musketeer Report, Kenny Freeze, Roll Blob podcast came on today. Stone Shield show coming up. I'll see you guys tomorrow. It'll be a better one, I promise you than that. See you guys.
All right, here we go. Welcome into the Stone Shield Show. My name is Stone Shields. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us through Off the Bench into my show in the 11 o'clock hour. Got plenty of good stuff to discuss on today's show. We're going to talk Cincinnati Bengals. We're going to talk Cincinnati Reds. And we have a special guest getting us going here out of the gate. And his name is Charlie Goldsmith. Does a terrific job covering the Cincinnati Reds and the Cincinnati Bengals. He's got an incredible newsletter, of course, as well. Charlie's Chalkboard. Charlie, appreciate you stopping by. Can you hear me?
I got you. How you doing?
Awesome. I'm doing phenomenal. Thanks so much for making some time. I know it's a busy week, obviously, as you're bouncing around doing a bunch of different stuff, but greatly appreciate you taking a few minutes for us here on today's show.
For sure.
All right, I want to start with the Bengals, and then we'll get into a couple of Reds questions later on there as well. Obviously, Trey Hendrickson has been a big story. He got hurt. He's gotten hurt a couple of times this year, but we haven't seen him since the Jet game, of course. Bengals didn't put him on IR. Obviously, it's been a week-to-week thing, but very early on throughout the course of a week, Zach Taylor pretty much on Monday coming up each and every week saying, yeah, you know what, going to be doubtful, or just flat out listing him as out, which has a lot of people wondering, you know, how serious is this injury? Obviously, he's not under contract for next year, so there's some questions there. Obviously, nobody at the end of the day besides Trey really knows what he's going through. But what's your kind of take on this whole situation, and has he played his last down perhaps with the Cincinnati Bengals?
I don't know. Clearly the ball, or not clearly, but the ball seems to be in Trey's court, just in terms of the fact that he's focusing on his rehab, the fact that the timeline has been vague and fluid and just week to week, as opposed to the IR move that would have made sense now in retrospect a month ago. So that fluid, unpredictable nature of it makes this a very tricky topic for the team, a very tricky topic to evaluate, a very tricky topic considering the nature of the injury, and it's left a lot of questions around what's going on.
No doubt. Defensively, it's gotten better over the course of the past few weeks, and I'm thinking back to last year, right, how Anarumo, he has his scheme, and it's kind of complex a little bit, and it took some time, obviously, for the Bengals to start playing well, and they really simplified things at the end of last year, and you saw them play a little bit better football there defensively. This year, it kind of feels like the inverse, right, because Al Golden comes in, he has a very simple scheme, things aren't going very well, and you wrote about this on your newsletter. It seems like it's getting a little bit more complex. To me, someone that doesn't exactly fully understand all the X's and O's, I can tell that, okay, they're blitzing a little bit more. But you wrote about this in your newsletter. What changes do you think Al Golden has made over the course of the past few weeks?
It's pretty fun and it's pretty clever. Let's get in the weeds. Like on third downs, they're putting two linebackers and 3 defensive linemen on the field instead of 4 defensive linemen and 1 linebacker. They are blitzing more, but also because they have fewer defensive linemen, they have more guys who can drop in coverage, so they can do more simulated pressures where, you know, one time it's Demetrius Knight dropping back and Jordan Battle blitzing. The next it's Demetrius Knight and Geno Stone blitzing with Jordan Battle dropping back in coverage. There's a much more unpredictable factor in terms of what they're showing, disguising, and executing with blitz looks. And the fact that they're putting all those wrinkles in place are signs, and they've said this, that they're willing to put more on the plates of these young guys. And it's been a natural evolution for a scheme that was stripped down to try to let these guys play fast, that they're now starting to build up more around.
Joseph Osai is a guy in particular the past few weeks. He's playing a lot better football. I had the mindset last offseason, you know what, I would just move off him. I thought the Bengals needed just more new faces on the defensive side of the ball. Obviously, they went in a different direction. They bring him back on a 1-year, $7.5 million kind of prove-it year deal. And the effort has always been there for Joseph Osai. The results haven't always been there, but over the course of the past few weeks, they certainly have. What's kind of your take on his performance? And do you think the Bengals are going to consider potentially signing him to a contract this offseason? I look at him as a player, young, has some production now. I feel like he's going to garner a sizable deal. Do you think the Bengals are going to want to bring him back?
I'm very curious to see what his market looks like when you factor in that he's had these spurts, but he still hasn't put together a full season, and that would even include this year. When you factor in his injury history, but then you factor in the traits, the hustle, the motor, the upside that he started to flash as well. The difference I've seen is it's pretty straightforward. It's when Trey Hendrickson's out there, Trey Hendrickson always gets to rush over the left tackle, and he should. He's one of the best at that in all of football. But Joseph Osai is pretty good at that too. from Joseph's rookie year to now, he's only done that a very small handful of times in true passing situations on third downs. Well, now with Trey out, that's Osai's job, and he's pretty good at it. And I believe 16 out of Osai's last 19 pressures are over the left tackle. So rushing over the left tackle, it's a spot where he clearly looks comfortable and confident and where the productivity is matched.
Chris Jenkins, another young player on that defense. You wrote about this as well in your newsletter. First time in his NFL career in the Patriots game, we actually saw him drop back in coverage a little bit, which we obviously hadn't seen before. What are some of your thoughts on that, and do you think that's something that could continue over the course of the next few weeks?
It only works if you do it like once a game. Now that they are 3 for 3 when they drop Chris Jenkins back in coverage. No, but that's another example of one of those little wrinkles that, they weren't putting a lot on Jenkins's plate, and you build up more, you build up more, you build up more. And I believe the results are incomplete sack interception on plays where as a part of one of those simulated looks, you've dropped Chris Jenkins back in pressure. So no, that's not something he's going to be doing anywhere near consistently, but it is kind of those one of those off the walls creative thinking ideas that the defense has benefited calling over the last couple weeks.
Burrow kind of had his welcome back moment there on the touchdown to Yoshi. You wrote about this. You basically broke down the entire play, which really encouraged people to go check that out. It was a great play, obviously, when you saw it, and it kind of gave the Bengals some momentum. They'd obviously been kicking a lot of field goals and allowed them to kind of create some separation, certainly, from Baltimore in that game. His performance on Thursday, is that kind of what you expected, or did he overachieve a little bit in that game? And is it fair to say that you would expect him to kind of build off that and be even better on Sunday against Buffalo?
It was better than I expected. I expected week 1 Burrow, which is the worst version of Burrow.
Sure.
And there were probably 4 throws in the first half where you kind of saw a little bit of that rust. But to be playing the game at the level and to be adjusting at the level and processing at the level that he was, looked for the most part to me like November, December Burrow, like we're typically accustomed to seeing from him at this point of the year. And it's pretty remarkable. He had a lot of stuff that he just did really well. A lot of quarterbacking he just did at a really high level, and I wasn't expecting him to necessarily reach that level for long stretches in his first game back, and he was also more mobile than I expected him to be. So all of that was a really encouraging debut, and it showed up in the results.
I want to ask you this question. I've asked several people that cover the team this very question about kind of how the process is on draft night. Obviously, Duke Tobin, for the first time in several years, really finds himself in the crosshairs. People have been maybe a little bit frustrated with him, but now you got a lot of the fan base like calling for his job, right? I'm interested to know, how much pull do you think he truly has? Are all these guys his guys? I think that's the case. You would know obviously more than me, but some people I feel like criticize Zach Taylor for some of these picks there as well. Typically in most NFL organizations, obviously the GM is the guy calling the shots, but Duke Tobin doesn't technically have that title. How much pull do you think he has ultimately on draft night?
I think he leads that process.
Yeah.
I know there's a collaboration as well with the coaches, and ultimately though, like while there is a collaboration, like the Bengals defense technically isn't run by Zach Taylor, but it falls on him. You know what I mean? Yeah. And the analogy I'm making is, even if it is more of a collaboration on the drafting side, it all falls back to your director of player personnel. So certainly when I look at the trends that haven't been good enough from a drafting perspective, I start with Duke.
No doubts. All right, Charlie Goldsmith joining us here for a couple more minutes live on the show. I'm going to transition our conversation a little bit to the Cincinnati Reds. Obviously, news of the night last night. Emilio Pagan, closer. He's going to be back 2 years, $20 million. Just your overall thoughts on that. Obviously, he wasn't perfect, but at the end of the day, if you're a closer, back-end bullpen guy, it's tough to really predict how good they're going to be. I've got some questions since he appeared in 70 games. That's obviously a lot, but do you think this was a good move for Cincinnati?
It's a move that I would have done.
Okay.
It's binary. Like, it's not like, they didn't just go out and get, Edwin Diaz for $5 million.
Sure.
But it's a move I would have done in a heartbeat. And frankly, it was a pretty good price tag, in terms of a pretty value price tag in terms of how good Pagan was last season. And there's risk. There's always risk in the relief market. You can talk about his home run ball. You can talk about the fact that he pitched 70 games, the fact that he was 34, but a lot of guys around baseball, not with the Reds, thought Emilio was and should have been an all-star last season. His durability is a huge asset. The way he leads the bullpen, and I put that more down the list, but that's a huge asset. His fastball is really underrated, like really, really, it's really, really good. And that's something that gives you confidence that it's a part of the adjustment he made with the Reds. Using that pitch more, you can buy into the idea that he's a guy who, with that adjustment, will keep building. It's a move I would have done 10 times out of 10. He's a great guy to have back.
We had Mark Sheldon on a couple of weeks ago, and I asked him about Schwarber, and he kind of said, that kind of feels like fantasy land, fairy dust kind of stuff. Now, all of a sudden, past few days, you're getting some reporters nationally saying, the Reds actually are doing everything they can to potentially bring him in. What are your kind of thoughts on that? Obviously, it's a huge player, hometown hero, all that good stuff. Is there a realistic chance they could bring him in?
Yeah, I haven't added anything yet kind of to the Schwarber conversation from a reporting standpoint. What I'm working on right now is, in terms of the information I'm working on, is what we've been told,
right?
Which is that the Reds had about $15 to $20 million of payroll flexibility this winter, and they just used 10 of it.
Yep.
Now, did that suddenly change over the last week? That's something I'm working on. I've got some work I'm doing over the course of the next week trying to get to the bottom of the answer to that question. But unless they suddenly just found $20 million or decided they were, ownership just threw in $20 million more dollars into the pot, something would have had to have changed for the Schwarber conversation to be really realistically picking up in that way.
If I told you the Reds didn't do anything else, right? Obviously, they've got some holes in their bullpen they should probably fill before opening day. But if I said they just went and got Schwarber, paid him a bunch of money, and that was it, what would your expectations be going into next year? Is that enough to compete for a Central title?
No, because I'm a big depth guy, and that when you watch the Reds every day, but when you watch a team every day, you really feel depth. Mm-hmm. And literally, the 2021 Reds fell out of the race because they ran out of pitching. The 2023 Reds, that happened. The 2024 Reds, that happened, and that didn't happen in 2025 because the Reds had depth. And so if they got Schwarber and didn't do anything else, and maybe you even have to, get off a player's contract or two to fit Schwarber in, you now have zero depth and you're one injury away from, what's his name? Remember Robert Duggar? 2022, they found this guy, Robert Duggar, because TJ Zoik, Cincinnati name. But you're at that spot. The 2024 Reds needed a guy named David Buchanan, and you lose games like that.
Yeah.
I believe in the power of depth, and this team's depth wouldn't be good enough if they only made one more move this winter.
Any other more realistic names from a bat perspective maybe that could be out there, kind of putting you on the spot here, but maybe some more affordable guys that could still potentially put the ball over the fence for you?
Let me pull up my spreadsheet. I'm still looking at the outfield in general.
Sure.
I think ideally it'd be someone who could play some center field.
Yep.
And those guys on the market would be Lane Thomas and J.J. Bleday. But, of course, you look at Austin Hayes, a corner guy. You look at Mike Yastrzemski, a corner guy. Adolis Garcia, Rob Refsnyder, who's more of a platoon guy. Those type of outfield pieces, to me, would be more realistic, or not more realistic, but more what you'd expect fits for what they've been able to afford in the past.
You had a great piece there as well, kind of talking about the Reds' struggles in extra innings, 3-12 in extras, most losses out of any team in Major League Baseball. Not going to ask you to recite the whole piece there, obviously, but what are some of the core issues that you discovered when kind of going back and watching all those games?
Well, the reason I did it was because at the end of last season, Terry Francona said, we need to go back and do this and the beauty of baseball is, in football, you never really know what the play calls are. In baseball, it's all right there. So I went back and I watched it all. And I think my biggest takeaway was, so the average team in all baseball lost 6 extra innings games last year. The Reds alone lost 6 games on the road. And in those 6 road games, they scored 1 run. And that 1 run was kind of a fluke because the Diamondbacks threw a ball into right field when the pitcher fielded in there. So you have the automatic runner on second, and you only got the guy in once, because the other team brought him in for you. That is, what can you do? I'm anti-bunting, but do you need to bunt more? Do you need to play for more 1 run? Do you need to drill even more, just moving a runner over at all costs to develop those skills in hitters? That was kind of the biggest trend that was on my mind going through that sample size.
Last one for you, Charlie. Bengals-Bills on Sunday. Obviously, I believe last I looked, 5.5-point spread in favor of Buffalo. Any keys to victory in that game for Cincinnati and just your overall expectations going into Sunday afternoon?
Yeah, the key to me is, again, like it's always been, but this week more than ever, these rookie linebackers.
Yeah.
There's progress. There's also mistakes that you're still seeing. And you are seeing the balance, shift more in the direction you want it to. But because of how Buffalo can stress you out with their run game, add in Josh Allen to that as well, and then factor in how successfully Buffalo's used tight ends over the course of the season, and the fact that every team every week is targeting the Bengals linebackers. This is a huge game for those guys this week, and if they do well, then that's something tangibly that could give you confidence in this defense. If they don't do well, then back to the mock draft simulators.
No doubts. All right, great stuff, Charlie. Appreciate you. Tell everybody about your newsletter, where they can go to find it. You're doing some work with Fox 19 now, and also a couple of podcasts there as well. Tell us all the great stuff you got going on.
Yeah, thanks. Just the Charlie's Chalkboard newsletter on Substack. You can also get it through Fox 19 on Fox 19's website through their sports tab, and the Growler Power Stacks. We're rolling. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Charlie. I know it's a busy week. Appreciate you making some time, and would love to do it again soon, my man.
Thank you.
All right, Charlie Goldsmith, great stuff. We certainly appreciate him. Busy week, obviously. He's covering the Reds. He's covering the Bengals. He's on Fox 19 doing a show over there. He's got multiple podcasts. So talk about people in this town that do a great job covering both the Bengals and the Reds. Obviously, Charlie is at the top of that list. We've been trying to get him on the show, and he's done a terrific job. And we certainly appreciate him making some time coming on the show with us here on a Thursday. That interview will be out later this afternoon on YouTube, obviously available in podcast form there as well. Definitely wanted to hit on some Red stuff there additionally on top of the Bengals with the deal with Pagan transpiring last night, and obviously all the Kyle Schwarber rumors here at this point. All right. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us here on a Thursday. Got about 40 minutes left here on the show. Lots of ground I do want to cover. Want to give a big shout out to all three of our guests here. Rick Broering, Kenny Freeze on Off the Bench with Reed. Did a great job with those interviews. By the way, those will be out on YouTube later this afternoon. And obviously a big special thanks to Charlie Goldsmith there as well. Before we dive into the rest of our show, do want to give everybody a reminder about the t-shirt sale that we have up on our website right now. Chatterboxsports.com/store. 2 shirts, $40. Use code DOUBLE, and that sale runs through December 10th, so about a week left here as it relates to that. If you're looking for a Christmas present for a family member or a friend, or shoot, you want to even get a gift for yourself, head on over to our website. Check those out. Chatterbox Reds, Chatterbox Bengals, Chatterbox Bearcats, all types of good stuff you could find on our site. They got multiple colors. Bengals, they got a blue one, a black one, and an orange one, and 2 shirts, $40. Use code DOUBLE. 100% of the proceeds go to your favorite Chatterbox Sports creators, and again, that sale runs through December 10th. All right, as always, make sure you like the stream and subscribe. Of course, if you haven't done so already, we are closing in on 21,000 subscribers here at the channel, and hopefully we can make that happen before Christmas. I think that certainly is a good goal to have, so I would invite everybody to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. All right, big Thursday night football game tonight. We've talked about this kind of at length throughout the Thursday night season. I remember a couple of years ago, you sometimes get like Titans-Jaguars, and it's like, okay, it's nice to have an NFL game tonight, but it doesn't really mean much. I think over the course of the past few years, and particularly this year, you've seen a lot better matchups, and it really has gotten to be a much better product on Thursday nights for the National Football League, and tonight is an absolute banger. The Dallas Cowboys going to Detroit to take on the Detroit Lions, and you got kind of two teams going in opposite directions, right? The Lions, of course, still winning records, still have playoff thoughts, aspirations on their mind, but they're definitely trending in the wrong direction right now. There's been some struggles, right? No Ben Johnson has been tough. Morton, the offensive coordinator, he was calling plays, and, that didn't go very well, and Dan Campbell kind of took it over, and he's been doing that over the course of the past few weeks. It's interesting. When you have a guy like that and Ben Johnson leave, he's not just any old offensive coordinator, right? When you have a guy that is that good that leaves, it isn't always the best to just sit there and say, hey, we're just going to promote from within, a little in-house, promotion, and we'll kind of go from there. It's not always the best decision to make when you have such a high-caliber guy leave the building. I think you might want to step back and go, okay, this guy was really good. We need to survey all of our options and go from there. And nothing against Morton. I think, he's been a really good coach in this league for a long time, but he's a position coach, right? He's not a play caller. He's not an offensive coordinator, and obviously that's what they were asking him to do early on. So the Lions find themselves in a bit of a sticky situation here. Obviously, they want to run the football. Jahmyr Gibbs is one of the best players in the NFL. They kind of got that, speed and power combo when they bring Montgomery into the game there as well. So Detroit obviously is going to want to run the football. And Dallas, at the beginning of the year, I would say, yeah, run the football all over the Dallas Cowboys. Now, all of a sudden, you make that trade for Quinn Williams, shores up the interior of your defensive line a little bit more, and that makes it a little bit more challenging to run the football against the Dallas Cowboys. So it'll be interesting to see the success or lack thereof that Detroit has on the ground. Again, they got Gibbs. They want to use him. They're going to give him the rock. Jared Goff is a guy that is a really good quarterback in this league, right? I'm not going to sit here and say he's a top 10 quarterback, but I definitely think he's in that top 12 to 15 range. He's had a long career. It's a great career. He's not a Hall of Famer. Let's not get carried away, but he's just a solid NFL quarterback. In a lot of ways, he's kind of a dinosaur this day and age, right? You don't see many guys that are just drop-back passers and lack mobility, right? It doesn't usually go that way anymore. He's definitely more of an old-school quarterback, but when you give him time and you give him a run game, he's a really good player, and he can find his weapons out there in space, give them the ball, and allow them to make some big-time plays. So the protection, obviously, is going to be huge. I think that's why Detroit has had success in previous years, because they've had one of the best, if not the best, offensive line in all of the National Football League. So if they can protect against that Dallas defensive line, which has gotten a lot better, right? Clark comes over in the Micah Parsons trade, and obviously Quinn Williams, you make the trade for him at the deadline. All of a sudden, okay, there's two guys there that are really good football players. DeMarvion Overshown, he comes back from a serious injury. He looks like he's starting to get his feet wet and play better football. All of a sudden, the Dallas Cowboy defense looks average, and we talk about this all the time with the Cincinnati Bengals. When you have a high-flying, prolific offense, all you need is an average defense to go out there and potentially beat anybody in the National Football League. I think that's why you're seeing Dallas kind of get some momentum here, right? You saw them beat Philadelphia against all odds. They're down 21-0 in that football game, come all the way back and win. You saw them even at home against the team of the Kansas City Chiefs. I'll be honest with you, I didn't think Dallas was going to win that game. I know the Chiefs aren't the same Chiefs this year that they have been over the course of the past few, right? But it's still Patrick Mahomes, it's still Andy Reid, it's still Travis Kelce in a big-time game. And they won that game, overcame an early turnover from Dak Prescott, and he went out there after that point and flat-out outdueled Patrick Mahomes. So it's going to be a very compelling game tonight, a very interesting game tonight. Again, I think the Detroit run game is really going to determine who wins. If Detroit can run the football, all of a sudden, play action set up, Jared Goff has some time, he's getting rid of the ball quickly, Detroit's going to score a lot of points still despite the improvement from Dallas on the defensive side. But if Dallas can stop that run, Clark has a good game, right? Quinn Williams has a good game. DeMarvion Overshown, he's in the backfield making some plays, and you make it a drop passing game for Jared Goff, right? Well, give me Dak Prescott in that matchup 10 times out of 10. No offense to Jared Goff, but Dak Prescott is quietly having, in my opinion, the best year of his career. You know, it's very interesting. Dak Prescott, of course, has had several different injuries, right? He tore something in his hamstring last year, and he's come back from that. And this looks like the best version of Dak Prescott. And it honestly looks like the most mobile version of him as well, despite the fact, obviously, he has undergone several injuries in his career to this point. And, you know, there's one thing. It's very easy when you sit here and talk about the NFL. One, it's easy to hate on the Dallas Cowboys. Why? Because anytime you turn on ESPN or any national media source, they're talking about them regardless of their record. And shoot, if the Dallas Cowboys win tonight, they're just going to continue to talk about the Cowboys, and it's going to get quite annoying. But, regardless of that, it's also easy to pick on Jerry Jones, right? And that's something a lot of us has done for a long time. It's like, all right, clearly this guy, he's an older guy, right? I'm not going to say he's losing it, but sometimes when he talks, you're like, what are you talking about? Are you fully there with me right now, Jerry, or are you somewhere else at this point? Jerry Jones has been terrific, right? People were banging on him. Oh, McCarthy's winning all these games. Why the heck are you not giving him an under contract? Well, he was a sitting duck coach. Won games his final year, and Jerry said, you know what? We're good. We'll move off you. What happened? You get a guy in there, Brian Schottenheimer. Everybody was laughing at Dallas like, that's the dumbest thing you could have done, right? A guy had never been a head coach. People haven't even considered him to be a head coach, right? Wasn't even calling your plays. It was McCarthy, and you're just going to give him the head coaching job. Everybody was laughing. It was a horrible search. They didn't even hardly interview anybody. Schottenheimer looks pretty awesome, doesn't he? And it was very, like, from the introductory press conference, it kind of perked up my ears a little bit because I'm sitting there, I'm going, oh, that was a good press conference. Oh, he's comfortable at the podium. Oh, he's got a lot of, belief in himself and a lot of confidence, and I think that can exude to the rest of your team at that point. I think it certainly has. And then I'm seeing him dial stuff up offensively, and I'm like, it's a good offensive coordinator, right? These play calls, great. He's got George Pickens out here looking like Randy Moss. He's got him out there looking better than CeeDee Lamb, to be completely honest with you. And all of a sudden, you got a quarterback that's playing the best he's played in Dak Prescott. You have a bit of a run game, despite the fact you go into the year kind of with a collection of backs, a stable of backs, running back by committee. Well, a couple of those guys have separated. They're running the football solid as well. You've always drafted offensive linemen really well. How about Booker, the rookie out of Alabama? People were laughing. You took him, in top 15? He's like, why are you taking another offensive lineman? He's at Alabama. He had struggles in his final year with the Crimson Tide. Tyler Booker looks pretty good, does he not? And the Cowboys have always been terrific at drafting the offensive line. So Jerry got the hire with Schottenheimer, right? He knew that Dak Prescott, how important he was. He paid him. Good decision there, right? He makes the move for George Pickens, right, who we all knew the talent was always there for George Pickens. It was just like, well, he's a little distracted. He's a little immature. He's doing some things he shouldn't be doing. George Pickens looks like an elite football player. Now, we'll see if they mess around with his contract or if they just, flat out pay him this offseason, which based on the performance on the field, I know him and CD had some fun there in Vegas, but what he's done on the field, great football player, and he's making all types of plays. And it's like, the route running is gorgeous. He's catching everything that's thrown his way. There's a physicality element. There's an athleticism element. He's jumping over guys, right? So George Pickens, has been incredible. And on top of that, what were people banging on Jerry for this offseason? It's like, how in the world could you trade Micah Parsons? How in the world is that something that you could do? It's one of the best defensive players in football, and you're going to, kind of treat him poorly out the door and not pay him. I'm not going to sit here and say Dallas definitely won the trade. Right? But it's kind of trending in that direction. It's going to work out great for Green Bay, and it is working out great for Green Bay. But I think Jerry understood that if you just put Micah Parsons, and you're already paying Dak and CD a ton, well, if you just spend the rest of your salary cap on Micah Parsons, it ain't going to look very good. Mind you, last year, Micah Parsons was out there. He was playing football, and the defense was horrible. Right? Kind of like Trey Hendrickson, Cincinnati. It's like, well, he's good, but the rest of the defense stinks, so what good does he really do? You get some compensation back with a couple of first-round picks, and you get a good veteran player back in Clark from Green Bay, and that's worked out really nice for you. He knew that Overshown was going to come back. Here comes Overshown. He's playing well. What did they do at the deadline? I think a lot of people thought, the Cowboys are just going to sit on their hands, and, they made the move for Logan Wilson, obviously former Bengal early on, and people are like, it's, is that your big move, Jerry? You're going to get Logan Wilson? And then they go get one of the best interior run stoppers in the National Football League in Quinnen Williams at that defensive tackle position. He's been tremendous since coming in. All of a sudden, you make a couple acquisitions like that, boom, your defense looks solid, right? Again, we talked about this earlier. If you have a really good offense, just need a decent defense. You don't need world beaters on defense. You don't need a top 10 defense. And it looks like Jerry Jones, believe it or not, is pulling all the right strings. The Micah trade, people thought he was crazy. Kind of has worked out. Not paying paying Dak Prescott. You're giving him too much money. Well, he's balling, right? He's balling. The George Pickens. Well, he's been a problem in Pittsburgh. He's just a goofball. He doesn't know what he's doing. That's working out. Hiring Schottenheimer. What are you doing? What kind of coaching search is that? That's working out too. So Jerry Jones, despite his age, is seemingly pressing all the right buttons here. And look, Dallas, I had him in the top 10 this week for the first time all year, and I think they deserve to be in the top 10 when you're evaluating the top 10 teams in the National Football League right now, when you're going through these power rankings and doing all this stuff. They belong in the top 10, absolutely. Now, do I think they're going to win tonight? No, right? I think going into Detroit, and Green Bay obviously just did this on Thanksgiving and won, but that's quietly becoming – that's a very difficult spot to go out there and play. And I believe that the game is in Detroit. I could be wrong on that, but I do know the Lions are favored by a couple of points. But, that can be a very difficult situation to have to go into. Cowboys are playing good football. They're hot. But, the Lions, they got their backs up against the wall. And a Dan Campbell-led unit with his backs against the wall, it's a dangerous team. But an incredible game, just an absolutely incredible game that we have the opportunity to watch here tonight on Thursday Night Football. Again, the run game, how Detroit runs the ball. If they run it well, they're going to win. If they don't, look out. Here come the Dallas Cowboys. But I think there's a world where this kind of turns into a high-scoring affair. And it's another opportunity for people to watch Dallas, which is a standalone game, obviously Thursday nights. If they win, the media is going to be insufferable if they do. But this isn't like a Cowboy team from a few years ago when you're like, these guys stink. Like, why are we talking about them? This is absolutely ridiculous. Dak's overrated. Dak's not a top 5 quarterback, but he looks like a franchise guy that should be and is getting paid a ton of money. That offense is fun to watch with Pickens and CD. Quinnen Williams all of a sudden on their defense. getting healthier a little bit there on the back end there as well. Overshown. He was one of the most fun guys to watch in football, and then he's hurt and he's out for a long time. People kind of forget about him. Talk about this with Burrow, right? While you're out, you're missing time. People forget about you. Marvin Overshown, incredible player, and he's coming back and he's doing a nice job there as well. So the game tonight should be terrific. Looking forward to that. All right, Reds made a move. Last night, we kind of talked about at length, like, all right, the Reds, they need a power bat. We all know that, preferably left-handed, right? A guy that can, either be a DH, right, or play a corner outfield spot, hit the ball over the fence, help generate some more runs for this offense, which obviously was lackluster, to say the least, last season for the Cincinnati Reds. And, that obviously is a hole for them. And also bullpen. You got to rework the bullpen for Cincinnati. And you didn't have a closer, right? When the offseason began, you didn't have a closer, right? And it was like, okay, what are we going to do there on the back end? And there were some rumors floated around with Devin Williams as a guy that could potentially, have interest in coming to Cincinnati and signing him. I think they made the right move. Pagan, obviously, is who they re-signed, and they're getting him at a cheaper price than what Williams went for. And Reed talked about this one off the bench. I totally agree. If you're a small market team like the Cincinnati Reds, you can't go out there and just, back up the Brinks truck for a back of the bullpen guy. Like you just can't do that. Like if you're a Yankee or a Dodger or a Met or whatever, a Philly, you want to do that, fine. But the Reds, you just don't have enough resources to be making a move like that. And there are some people that are going to sit out there and say, well, you gave Emilio 2 years, $20 million. Believe there's an opt-out after the first year, so $10 million, obviously, this first year. It's maybe a little bit higher than what I would have liked, but it's better than the Devin Williams deal. And look, you went to the postseason with Emilio Pagan as your closer. It was a position that you needed to value and a position that you needed to take care of, and Pagan's their guy at the back end of their bullpen. Are there some question marks that come with that? Absolutely. We talked about this with Charlie at the top of the show. That's such a difficult position to predict. Might be the most difficult position to predict in sports, to be honest with you. A closer in your bullpen. How are you going to predict, like, okay, he's going to be nails each and every year, or he had a good year, he's going to have another one, or he had a bad year and he's going to have another bad one. He might have a bad year and then have a good year. Like, it's just so difficult to predict at that spot of a baseball team, that closer that comes in the game. And he was good enough, I think. And, look, baseball fans, if you got a guy, if you're at one game, right, Nick Kirby, Trace Fowler, obviously our guys, they're watching all 162, right? But for the majority of Reds fans, you're not watching all the games. So if you're at a game or you're watching a game and a guy goes in there and blows a save or blows a lead or gives up a grand slam after you're winning a game in like the 7th inning, you have a lot of negativity towards that particular player, right? And it kind of sticks with you, right? If you're at a game and somebody could be having an incredible year and he goes out there and gives up a 3-run bomb in the 7th inning and you lose, you got some animosity towards that player, and that's going to linger, right? That's just baseball. That's just how it works with bullpen. So there's a couple of games where Pagan, could have lost, right? And think about the very end of the year where you needed Noel V. Marte to pull off a miraculous catch to kind of keep her playoff hopes alive there. So I think we're having a completely different conversation about Pagan if that catch isn't made. But they needed to address it. I'm not up in arms about it. Paying $10 million for a closer, okay, I'm here. It's a little more than I would like, but I'm all right with it. He was solid for you. My biggest question is 70 games last year. He was out there, and I made the joke with my buddies. It's like, well, if the Reds are playing, that means Pagan and Santiago are going to work, right? Because those guys are going to be out there. 70 games, that is a lot. So you don't know how his body's going to respond to that, and you don't know if he's going to, potentially impact him this year. And again, you have an opportunity to potentially get out of this after 1 year, but he's your closer this year, and you're allocating lots of your budget. Remember, Charlie talked about this as well. I've said Cincinnati Reds. You don't have a massive budget here. $10 million, it's not the NFL. Like $10 million is like, okay, that's a lot that you're allocating towards Emilio Pagan. So we'll see. Charlie liked the move. I think our guys here at Chatterbox Reds, Craig Sandlin and Andrew Collinsworth, they went live last night and had a great live show. I think they were, pretty much on board with it as well. I'm a little hesitant. I think, guys like me, I'm like, well, is that going to take away from getting Kyle Schwarber? What chances do you really have of getting Kyle Schwarber if we're being completely honest here at this point? Hopefully, higher than we would think, and certainly higher than they were a couple of weeks ago. But will it impact him? I'm not quite sure, but that obviously is the move of the day yesterday, and we'll see, how this works out for Cincinnati. I like it a heck of a lot more than Devin Williams' move. He played really good baseball for you, and, you hear these guys talk, Nick Kroll, Tito. It's a lot more than just, what he does out there on the bump in the 9th inning. right? It's kind of a presence that he has in the clubhouse and an energy that he brings to the team and a leadership that he brings to the team there as well. Remember, this is a guy that's played in some big games. Obviously, he was with Tampa. For the majority of his career, he was kind of a reliever, right? Not just a closer, right? He was more of a 7th, 8th inning guy than a 9th inning guy. But, he was a 9th inning guy last year, and, it worked out for Cincinnati. But I don't think this is purely a closer pitching decision for Cincinnati. I think they look at their roster and they go, hey, obviously we're going to be a lot older this year than we were last year, or 1 year older, but a lot more mature, hopefully. But there's still a lot of youth on this team. And having a veteran that's played in some big games, obviously, getting that postseason experience against the Dodgers, which team that won the World Series, right? Obviously, the Reds didn't win a game in the playoffs against the Dodgers. That's not necessarily ideal, but it's not like the Dodgers went on to get blown out immediately after that. They ran through everybody, and then obviously had a miraculous comeback against the Blue Jays and were able to win the World Series. So I don't think if you're the Reds getting swept by the Dodgers in a 3-game set, like that's nothing to be all down and out about. You had some valuable experience. It was good for some young guys to get that. Obviously, Pagan gets a little bit more there as well, and you kind of hope to build off that. But at the end of the day, I'm not all ticked off about this move. 2 years, $20 million, a position of need. Now the question is, how are you going to allocate some of your other resources? Talked about Kyle Schwarber. I haven't talked about it a ton on my show in recent days, but some new reports coming out there. Ken Rosenthal, Feinstein, a couple other of these big-time guys saying, hey, the Reds are in the mix here. I think the Phillies are definitely the front runners, quote unquote, but the Reds are absolutely in the mix here for Kyle Schwarber. Again, will there be a hometown discount or something like that? I don't know. Would encourage everybody, as I have several times, the Seg Dennison. There's other reporters there as well asking him questions at Middletown. Go out and watch it if you haven't done so already. Easy Google search. You'll find it, and it's very clear. I'm hearing all these things going into the offseason. Oh, bring Schwarber home. I'm like, whatever. Like, I heard he still hangs out here. Fine. Then I heard that interview where he's sitting down talking to reporters and just the love and admiration that he has for this town and that his family has for this town as well. You got to capitalize if you're the Cincinnati Reds. Because when you have, like, for instance, when some of these big-time names become free agents, right? Like, if a huge superstar like a Judge or an Ohtani, obviously those guys are under contract, just an example. When you have the best players in baseball be free agents, the Reds don't have a chance again. No chance. No chance. A little bit different here because you got home field advantage, right, with Kyle Schwarber. And we'll see ultimately if the franchise can do anything. I asked Charlie this question of if they just got Schwarber and didn't do anything else, would that be enough? He said no. I respect him, but from my perspective, it just gives you some juice. So it's like, we'll figure out the bullpen, right? The guys are going to get hurt in spring training anyway. You're going to have to call up guys that you have in your farm system. There's inevitably going to be some guys up there that you and I hadn't heard of, right, that are going to get an opportunity. It's 162 games. It's just how it works, right? I know if Kyle Schwarber's here, you're going to hit a bunch of bombs and score a bunch of runs, which is great. And I think another aspect of this whole thing that people don't really understand, I just got to say this about Elly De La Cruz. He gets way too much crap in this city. I don't understand. Look, has it been perfect defensively? Obviously not. Does he have a lot of errors? Yes, we understand that. My argument to that is, well, he plays shortstop, right? Go at any level of baseball. Look at any college team. Look at any high school team. Who has the most errors? Oh, it's the starting shortstop. That just comes with the position, all right? That's number one. Number two, the skill set that he has, and I think we all understood this when he got called up, but then he slumped a little bit there at the end of the second half of the year last year. We understand that, and then the report comes out that he was playing hurt, which my respect level, I think some people took that and said, oh, the Reds are stupid. What are they doing? Why would they do that to him? They didn't protect Elly. Fair, but my response to that is, oh, he's a dog. Right? Oh, he's a dog. He's a ball player. He wants to stay out on the field, play through this injury when there was a lot of times where it looked like, the Reds, they're probably out of this thing. And he said, nope, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to play. I respect the heck out of Elly De La Cruz for doing that. But this is an all-time talent, right? And you've got several more years with him, hopefully his whole career. But let's be honest, probably not going to happen when you lose team control. Probably going to go elsewhere. Capitalize now. And bringing in a guy like Schwarber, we're all talking about the home runs and how great it's going to be to score some more runs. Think about the protection that gives Elly in the lineup, right? Now, I don't know how they would do it. Schwarber obviously has let off a lot for the Phillies. You're seeing that a lot more in today's Major League Baseball. Growing up, you don't have your best hitter hitting one. But you look at the Phillies, Schwarber's hitting one, right? You could argue Turner is a better hitter, but from a power standpoint, you got a power guy hitting one. Ohtani's hitting one for the Dodgers, right? Growing up, that never happened. You had a speedster up there, and obviously the Reds are doing that with TJ. But I don't know where they would put him. Right, if they would put him one here, I kind of feel like they would drop him down the lineup a little bit if he was here. But regardless, he's going to be around Elly somewhere, and that gives some protection here. Because where was the protection with Elly? throughout the lineup. But look, I love Spencer Steer as much as anyone. Hey, Spencer Steer might be my favorite player on the team, either him or Abbott, to be honest with you. I absolutely love Spencer Steer. But, like, that's your next guy that's like a threat in your lineup? Austin Hayes, right? Like, I mean, that teams aren't worried about those guys. And I think that hurt Ellie on top of the injury that he was playing through, right? If you have Schwarber in that lineup, it strikes fear in the opposition. You got Ellie De La Cruz, too, and that can open up some more opportunities for him there as well. So be really interested, obviously, to see how this would transpire. And, it was interesting because I'm reading a piece last night. We had Mark Sheldon, of course, great job covering the Reds, MLB.com. He was on our show a couple of weeks ago. I asked him the question. He was like, it's kind of a long shot, right? And that's what, most people that don't let the fan kind of get into them a little bit or just trying to be as real as possible probably had that same opinion. Well, he's penning a piece the other night saying, you know what, there's a chance here. Reds aren't out of this thing yet. So, it could just be all smoke. But sometimes, or a lot of times, when there's smoke, there's fire. And, look, I don't know Kyle Schwarber. Obviously, I have not talked to him, but I think behind closed doors, if you sat down there and said, if the money was equal everywhere, where are you going? He would say, I'm coming to the Queen City, and I ain't thinking twice. Obviously, the money is probably not going to be equal, but we'll see if that factors into his decision at all or not. I wanted to talk about the Cleveland Browns a little bit as well on today's show. It's interesting, right? Because I'm looking at the Cleveland Browns, and they're just a mess, right? But it really shouldn't be that much of a mess, but they are a complete mess. And, I'm looking at them this year, and what are they doing up there? Losing a bunch of games again. And it's weird because you have some of these teams, Browns really at the top of the list, that are just always bad. Browns certainly won. Raiders, right? Now, I think their situation in Vegas is a heck of a lot worse than the situation in Cleveland. That's another team. Tennessee had good years from Vrabel, but I think they're going to be circling the drain. I'm not out on Cam Ward, but it's like I don't anticipate them, especially with kind of the resurgence of the Colts. Cohen appears to be a good fit in Jacksonville, Stroud, and that defense, they're going to be an issue for a long time. I don't anticipate the Titans. I think they're going to be a bottom feeder for several years now at this point. The Jaguars for a while obviously were, but now the Cohen seems to have brought some stability into there. But there's no reason that the Browns should be in that category, but here they are. Each and every year they find themselves in that spot. And you look at their roster, and Myles Garrett is the best defensive player in the National Football League. And he has for some time. Like, this guy's going to have more than 20 sacks. That's absurd. We're all sitting here in Cincinnati saying, 17 and a half from Trey Hendrickson. Unbelievable. Myles Garrett's going to blow that out of the water. Myles Garrett is unbelievable. Surefire Hall of Famer. Imagine this. I was thinking about this. You put Myles Garrett, who, he's played in a couple of playoff games, right, when Flacco had the terrific run a couple of years ago, and then they got blown out by the Texans on the road, right? And then Baker had the playoff game where he beat Pittsburgh, and then a couple of years later, the Browns were done with Baker. Obviously, they're still kicking themselves for that here at this point. But imagine Myles Garrett on the Eagles. Imagine Myles Garrett on the Niners. Imagine Myles Garrett on the 49ers. Right? I mean, that would be trust. I mean, the Chiefs would have been, we thought that was insufferable with how they were doing. Imagine if they had Chris Jones and Myles Garrett. They would beat the crud out of everybody, right? Not this year, but like in years in the past. They would have, I promise, they probably would have won the Super Bowl last year, to be honest with you. I understand the game wasn't close, but you get my point. Same with the Eagles, a team that's always in the playoffs, a Packer team, right? Because that's such a valuable position. But when you're on a cruddy team like the Cleveland Browns, you just don't get that. Like, yeah, you can rack up some numbers, get some sacks, get some highlights, but you're not in a spot to really have a huge effect. I think we're going to see this in Green Bay with Micah Parsons. Playoff time is going to roll around, and the Packers are going to be in kind of a close game, and they're going to have a lead, maybe up by a field goal, and it's going to feel like it's either team's game, and then boom, Micah Parsons is going to create havoc there in the fourth quarter, and they're going to win, right? What he could do on a playoff team would just be unbelievable. But they've had him his whole career, and they haven't been able to do anything. Like, that's ridiculous. This is one of the – I don't want to get too carried away here, but this is like one of the best players of all time. Like, Myles Garrett is that good, right? And he's been in Cleveland and has just been a part of losing year in and year out. He acted like he wanted out. You know what, get me out of here. And then all of a sudden, Brown said, we'll give you all the money. And he said, you know what, I'll take the money and hang around here in Cleveland for a little bit longer. So that's a guy. But you look at other guys of their defense there as well. I mean, they've got solid guys on defense. The UCLA linebacker, rookie Schlesinger, great player. Great player. Denzel Ward is one of the most underrated players in the National Football League out of Ohio State. He's been there forever. He's tremendous. And then what they haven't done anything with him, and they're productive, on the defensive side of the ball, but it hasn't been enough to win a bunch of games, right? And it's, Stefanski has won the Coach of the Year twice, and I don't really think it's a Stefanski issue as much as it is an Andrew Berry issue. And Andrew Berry's their GM. Now, people say that, well, why are they, people are always like, oh, Cleveland, like Stefanski, Cleveland Coach of the Year, and Andrew Berry, they're doing a good job, with the roster and the personnel and stuff. Like, at some point, you got to win. At some point, you got to win. And the Cleveland Browns just aren't even close to doing that here at this point. And I get it. Stefanski, Ivy League guy. Andrew Berry, Ivy League guy. Maybe that's why, they want to give them a longer leash and not be as hard on them as some other guys. Don't really understand that, but, kind of makes sense, right? The media dictates the narratives a lot of times, and, a lot of the media or, people with high education, and maybe they're like, they're kind of one of us, we'll give them a pass here. I don't know, maybe that's just me making that up, but it kind of feels like that could be, a potential reason for why people aren't dragging them a little bit more. I mean, all they do is lose. All they do is lose. And again, I think it's more of a Barry thing than a Stefanski thing, but, like, we need to talk about them taking Dillon Gabriel in the 3rd round. I mean, Dillon Gabriel is tiny, right? I mean, people say, oh, he's like Tua. I think he's smaller than Tua. And Tua was a guy that won a national title and was, a surgeon with the football. Dillon Gabriel was a really good college quarterback, but he wasn't on Tua's level, right? And you're going to take him in the 3rd round. He looks like a 5th-round guy. And speaking of the 5th round, you took another quarterback there as well. Like, you have to figure out that position. And unfortunately, in the NFL, if you don't have that position figured out, you're in a world of trouble, right? You're seeing it all over the place. I mean, look at Indianapolis, how bad they've been in recent years. And a lot of the same guys are there, skill perspective, right? Pierce has been great out of UC. Pittman's solid as well. You hit with the tight end there, and Warren, got some veterans there on your defense. They weren't a force at all, and all of a sudden you put a little bit of competent quarterback play in there, and the Colts are rattling off wins. Now they're in a bit of a tailspin right now, and we'll see if they can even hold on to a playoff spot. Daniel Jones obviously banged up with the fractured fibula, but it just shows you how important that position is here in this league. And ever since they let Baker go, they haven't even been close to figuring out that position. And they got to be kicking themselves. This is what happened if you want to go back in time a little bit with the Baker Mayfield thing. Baker, he's always been a little bit of feisty, right? He's a guy that wasn't, he was a walk-on originally in college, was not a, highly touted recruit by any stretch of the imagination. And then, when he left Tech, it wasn't like everybody was knocking down the doors for him to come by any stretch. And then, boom, he wins the Heisman. Boom, he's the number 1 overall pick. But that chip on his shoulder never changed. And, he was a little bit feisty, right? And I don't think Cleveland liked that. And there was he would get in it with members of the media, right? Remember, he was doing all those commercials, which were great commercials, by the way, of, the stadium being like his house or whatever. Great commercials. But, when you're not winning a ton of games, probably not the best thing in the world for you. And then, Baker obviously goes to Carolina, gets cut, goes to the Rams for a cup of coffee, and then gets an opportunity. I think it was like a 1-year, $4 million deal in Tampa, where he's competing with Kyle Trask for the starting job. Wins the starting job, and the rest kind of is history there with Baker. But he was trying to play through injury in Cleveland, and I think some of his toughness got in his way a little bit, and it caused him to play poorly. And then Cleveland was like, we're going to move off him, which obviously is a horrible mistake. Baker Mayfield, say what you want about him. You don't have to be the biggest fan of Baker Mayfield, but he's a great NFL quarterback. A really good NFL quarterback. I mean, not a great NFL quarterback. A really good NFL quarterback. A franchise NFL quarterback. You can win lots of games with Baker Mayfield as your guy. And Cleveland let him walk out the door. They let him walk out the door. And that's just a losing mentality. It's a losing organization. You can't make those type of mistakes there at that position. Obviously, they've been reeling ever since. I don't have a great plan of how they're going to fix it, right? I mean, they went with a 3rd-round pick and a 5th-round pick. Is that your future at quarterback? I know Shador getting a lot of hype or whatever. How'd he play against the Niners? Not very good. I know he won the Vegas game, but that wasn't very good either, to be honest with you, right? So what are you going to do at that position? Are you going to draft another guy? You're just going to, we'll take a guy in the 1st round. Look at the quarterback class. I don't think Mendoza is going to be a good NFL quarterback. I think Simpson has the ability to be the best one, but is he going to be a franchise guy? I don't know. I don't see a surefire guy on the board. Right? Are you going to get a bridge quarterback, right? Are you going to try to get Flacco back even though you just gave him this? Like, what are you going to do at that position? And when you're that clueless at that position, I don't care how good you are everywhere else, it's going to look really, really bad. And it's just unfortunate for Cleveland because at some point, they're going to have bad guys on their defense, right? You talk about this all the time. When you have a solid roster in place in this league, you've got to be able to capitalize because guys one, they age and get older, and then some of the guys that are on rookie deals, they need to get paid, right? And with the salary cap, you can't keep everybody. They've got enough guys on that team to win football games, but they have no clue what they're doing at the quarterback position, and they obviously need more skilled guys there as well. I like Jerry Jeudy, but is he a 1? No, he's more of a 2, right? And beyond him, like, what do you have? Tillman? Oh, nice. That's not very good, right? Fannin, I think, has some upside there at the tight end spot. Kind of use him as a receiver a little bit at times, right? But what are you going to do at that position? You have to address it. I think Andrew Berry deserves way more criticism for than what he's gotten. I mean, obviously I'm not up in Cleveland, but I mean, people in this town are ringing Duke Tobin. They should be doing the same up there in Cleveland with Andrew Berry, because to draft Dylan Gabriel in the 3rd round and then draft another guy 2 rounds later, what are you doing? One of the best defensive players in all time, Miles Murphy. And what have you done? You haven't been able to do anything with him, and that's a shame if you're the Cleveland Browns. All right, a couple of more topics. We'll roll through some sports headlines here before we get out of here on today's show. Just a couple of things I do want to touch on. Obviously, college football in full swing, the calendar. We talked about this with Chuck Martin earlier in the week. To me, it's broken, right? I mean, like, you're getting ready for the most important parts of the year, right? You're doing your summer workouts. I don't know if teams do 2-a-days or whatever anymore, but you're grinding all year. You're recruiting your butt off, all for these moments. To play in the postseason, to play in conference championships, and have a chance to potentially go to the college football playoff. And that's when, coaches are leaving, right? Getting poached, right? Going to different jobs. National signing. Like, what is going on? That's got to be fixed. It's very clear, right? And Ryan Day was talking about this yesterday as well. Basically saying, Brian Hartline leaving. It's not Brian's fault. Some other people's fault, but we're going to handle it the best we can. That's kind of the one I'll start with here. Brian Hartline going to South Florida. Look, it's been very obvious for anyone that follows the sport that Brian Hartline has been interested in becoming a head coach somewhere, right? He was in the mix for the Boston College job, ultimately didn't get it, but he's been sniffing around to get an opportunity here. We'll talk about the Kentucky job in a second, but reportedly he was maybe a finalist for that gig there as well. And Brian Hartline's one of the best assistant coaches in college football. Obviously, what he's done from a recruiting standpoint. Ohio State is wide receiver U. Why? Brian Hartline. Guy doesn't miss. Guy understands that he's going to go get the best receivers, and they understand that if they go to Ohio State and play for him and play for Ryan Day, they're going to have an opportunity to be a high draft pick. And, I mean, the list is getting incredibly long. I mean, you look at some of these guys in the NFL, and, I think a guy that maybe had the most hype and upside was Marvin Harrison. But look at Njigba. Look at Ibuka, who was the 3 last year on Ohio State. He's, if he would have stayed healthy all the way and, had some help there with Mike Evans staying healthy, was going to win Rookie of the Year. I'm probably not going to do that here at this point, but certainly should be up for that award. He's been tremendous. The list goes on and on. Olave, he's been in a mess there quarterback play-wise. Same with Garrett Wilson, but those 2 guys are 1s in this league, right? So the list kind of just goes on and on and on. Losing him's huge for Ohio State. Now, I thought Ryan Day, it's different because when you have a lot of success, and Ryan Day's been having a lot of success, it's a lot easier to, handle the media and say the right things. And Ryan Day, he's saying all the right things. If you just listen to Ryan Day, it's like, how can you not like this guy? Saying all the right things. He's beating the crud out of everybody. Ryan Day's in a really good spot right now for the Ohio State Buckeyes. We'll see if that continues. He's like just more of a pleasant guy. I mean, the losing obviously had weighed on him tremendously. People in Columbus were going after him, calling for his job, right? I think a lot of people thought there was a decent chance that he would get fired, right, if they had lost to Tennessee. Now, I don't know. I think the AD came out at the time and said, no, Ryan Day's our guy. But he went into that Tennessee game probably feeling horrible. And all he's done since that moment is beat the crud out of everybody. And he's moving different. He's got all types of confidence. And I was really impressed with how he handled the Heartline thing, right? That is how everybody should handle it. Now, it's easier to do it when you're the best team in the country, right? It's a lot easier when you're in that spot to say all the right things. I get that. But basically saying we're really happy for Heartline. It means a lot when one of your assistants that's been here for a long time has put in a lot of hard work, that wants to be a head coach, is getting that opportunity. We're going to work with Brian here throughout this process, and, we intend on him sticking around, being our guy throughout the playoff run, finish this thing out strong, and then ultimately going to USF. And I thought Brian handled it tremendously. But from a USF perspective, obviously they lose Golish. He takes the Auburn job, which don't even get me started there on that. I think it's another miss for Auburn. But Golish, credit to him. He had a great run at USF. I think they upgraded because now they get Brian Hartline. And I think he's going to be a solid head coach. Is he going to transition into he'll get a big-time job soon? No, but I think he'll have, USF has been, in a program in the American that has just been, they've always been respected in that conference, and they've done good work in that conference. I think that's going to continue. Is he going to, be a Group of 5 playoff team each year? I'm not going to get carried away here, but that's a great hire by USF. And, obviously happy for Brian Hartline. He gets to go down to Tampa, right? It's, have an opportunity to be a head coach. So, that's kind of the big news from a guy leaving at Ohio State. And it'll be interesting to see how the dominoes fall if it becomes a distraction. Because I just said all those nice things about Ryan Day and how he handled the situation. But, Saban and Kiffin tried to have that element too, and then eventually Saban was like, I can't do this. I'm going to fire you before the national title. Now, I don't think Ryan Day would do something like that, but, we'll see if it's smooth sailing, right, especially if they were to drop the game on Saturday, right, against Indiana. I don't think that will happen, but maybe you add a little bit more turmoil there, and we'll see how things play out ultimately for Brian Hartline. But a great hire by USF. Another great hire, Kentucky. They get Will Stein. Will Stein is a really young guy and has been the offensive coordinator now for Dan Lanning at Oregon for a couple of years. And I think it's a great hire for Kentucky. And, again, he's one of those guys that apparently he was at UK. I think he was at the basketball game the other night. He was on campus, whatever. I think the intent is that he's still going to call plays for Oregon throughout this run. And for what it's worth, I think that's the right thing. You're starting to see this a lot, right? Like the James Madison guy that's going to UCLA. He's going to stick around, right, and coach James Madison. Same with Sumrall at Tulane. He's going to stick around before, going to Gainesville and being the guy at Florida. The one outlier here is Lane Kiffin. So, maybe that says a little bit about Lane, but I also understand from an Ole Miss perspective, going to a borderline rival, not a good situation to be in. But Will Stein, I think, is going to, look, you're at Kentucky, right? That's not a football school. I mean, if you've been to any of these venues in the SEC, all you got to do is go into Kroger Field and say, I don't really feel like the SEC in here. So he's got an uphill battle. But, again, the expectation for the football coach at Kentucky is not to win 10 games. It's not to go to the college football playoff, right? That's why Stoops was able to keep his job for so long, because it's like, well, you're at Kentucky. We're not giving you much here to work with from a resource perspective. We're a basketball school. We know that. You know that as well, but we still need you to win some games. It's kind of why Stoops was able to hang on for as long as he did. And, I think this program is going to get better, though, with Will Stein. He's a really bright offensive mind, young guy with a lot of energy. Remember Liam Cohen? He was there calling plays, I think, with Will Levis a few years ago. That kind of brought some juice there to them. I think you're going to see that similarly here with Will Stein. I think it's a great hire. In fact, it might be the best hire out of all the hires that have been made by Kentucky. So I'll be really interested to see how they go from there. But again, it's an uphill battle there, right? You got to play teams like LSU and Alabama and Georgia, right? Ole Miss, Texas, Oklahoma. Like that's difficult, especially at that university. But we'll see. I think he can really take the step in the right direction there for them. Some players came out for Ole Miss and accused Lane Kiffin of lying. He said in his little tweet that he put out that, all the players wanted me to stay and coach. And I'm sure it wasn't, unanimous one way or the other, but some players are coming out saying, no, actually, we wanted you out the door. And, I think if you polled each and every Ole Miss player, it'd be close to 50-50, but I would say more probably wanted him to stay, right? Understanding that, well, they probably have a better chance at winning the national title if he were to stay versus not coach the team in the playoff. But I did just think that was interesting that, some players are like, no, like, you don't want to be here. You're leaving to go to another team in the SEC. See ya. We'll have Pete here, Pete Golden. We'll promote him to the head coach, and we'll go from there. So thought that was certainly interesting there as well. Mark Andrews signs a 3-year deal with the Baltimore Ravens. That was a surprise. This is his third contract. That doesn't really happen a ton for teams, giving him 3 years, and it hasn't been all sunshine and rainbows for Andrews this year. He's been solid. I think at one point he overtook the leader in team history for the most receiving yards for the Baltimore Ravens. He's been a tremendous player. His legacy has been tainted a little bit with how he performed in the divisional round last year, the playoffs against Buffalo, right? He had that fumble earlier, and then the 2-pointer at the end he just flat out dropped. So I think some people that aren't really familiar with Baltimore and watch them a ton just think, oh, this guy, what is he doing? He's not very good. Mark Andrews is an incredible football player, and he's 30 years of age now, but probably exiting his prime a little bit, but, clearly getting an extension. The Ravens believe that he still has some years left in his prime. But he's a really good football player. He's a really good tight end, and there's been great tight end play in this league for several years now. But Mark Andrews at the top of that list, and people understand. The Bengals certainly understand that there as well. But there was kind of an element to, I thought Isaiah Likely would get the extension kind of coming into this year for Baltimore, and then ultimately that didn't materialize, and then he had the injury early, and he missed several games. And they got 3 guys there at that tight end spot with Kohler as well, who I believe is in a contract year additionally. And kind of after paying Andrews this, guys like, okay, they're going to stick with Mark Andrews here. And I think Isaiah Likely probably will have a new home next year, for being completely honest. So I was surprised to see that. An extension mid-year doesn't happen a ton. Never happens in this town. But maybe that's something that's we'll see a little bit more of. And I think, it's kind of a gutsy move for Baltimore to, roll the dice on a guy that's 30 years of age, but my gut tells me this is in large part a Lamar Jackson move, because that's been his favorite target his whole career. The 2 guys came in together. They've had a great rapport, great relationship, and he gets a 3-year deal. Lastly, MVP. Kind of feels like a 2-horse race here at this point. I thought Stafford was creating some separation from Drake May, and then boom, he loses to the Carolina Panthers, turns it over 3 times. And, that's obviously not good if you're campaigning, obviously, for the MVP. Drake May, I still think, has a real opportunity to win it, and it kind of feels like it's a 2-horse race at this point between those 2 guys playing terrific football, but I think they've kind of distanced themselves from the pack a little bit here. All right, that'll do it for this edition of the show. Appreciate everyone, as always, for tuning in, and certainly appreciate Charlie Goldsmith for making some time here on the show. Busy week for him. He's got podcasts, and he's writing a ton, doing all kinds of stuff, and I'm sure he's going to Buffalo as well. He typically does travel and follow the Bengals wherever they go, but busy week for him. He makes some time for us on a Thursday. We greatly appreciate him, and that interview will be out later this afternoon, as will Reed's interviews with Rick and Kenny Freeze there as well, as we prepare for the Crosstown Shootout, obviously transpiring tomorrow night at the Cintas Center. Remember to get those shirts up on our websites, and great deals, 2 for $40. Use code DOUBLE. Chatterbox Bengals, Reds, Bearcats, you name it. Get some swag for a family member or yourself this Christmas season. And we will be back on the show tomorrow. And until then, take care, everybody.